It's the Infinite Podcast. Go tell your friends. It's the Infinite Podcast. My God, it never ends. It's the Infinite Podcast with Rob and Cork the Q.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite Podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom for movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We've got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. How's it going, man?
It's going all right.
It's going all right? So what are we talking about this week? We're talking about QuantuMania and Last of Us, as always.
Yeah.
But
we're
mostly...
we're contractually obligated to talk about The Last of Us from now on. So.
Yeah, we trapped ourselves in this cycle of talking about The Last of Us.
Much as people get trapped in the quantum realm.
True. That do be happening a lot.
Yeah.
More than it should.
Yeah. You just can't put quantum in front of everything.
Or can you?
Or can you?
We're going to answer, can you?
Can. Alright, that's been another episode. Man.
Or can you? So we're going to talk about Ant-Man because...
what if there's a variant of Kang that gets the joke book from The Last of Us?
Oh, and he's like a quippy one-liner guy?
Yeah.
But like they're bad jokes?
Oh, man. Or they're dad jokes.
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah, we do need that. We need all the variants after this movie. So Ant-Man QuantuMania came out. And, as always, these Marvel movie, when they come out, are like these events that like everybody has to go see. So we saw it twice. We're going to talk about it. But first, we are going to talk about The Last of Us because, that's just where we are now.
Yep.
So
when a show's that good, you can't just not talk about it. So.
Yeah, so episode 6, Kin, premiered 10 days after episode 5, because episode 5 came out on the Friday before the Super Bowl, and then episode 6 returned to its normal Sunday night spot. And, I mean, what else needs to be said about this show? It just continues to just roll along as one of the best shows. Yep. It's moving into obviously it's going to probably go down as the best show of 2023, probably quite easily. And it's now vaulting into that conversation.
It's incredible week in, week out, and it's just strong. It's this strong layer of realism, which I think is propelling it as well. And I mean, you get personified through your actors and through your performances and through your score and all those things, but what's really bringing it home is how real it feels. And I think that realism layer is really striking a chord with people that have not played the game, and I think that's the audience you needed to attack. And it's also pleasing people that have played the game, and that's the other battle that you have to fight.
While also changing some things around from the game, as far as it's not a one-to-one adaptation. I mean, episode 3 is obviously the most drastic example of that, but even in this episode, we had some differentiations from this point in the game, where Joel and Ellie get to Jackson, they get to the reunion with Tommy. We haven't seen Gabriel Luna since episode 1, so it was great to see him again.
That's my Ghost Rider.
Yeah, and he's also great in this. I mean, he was great in the limited capacity that we saw him in episode 1, but it's really cool. What I like about seeing him again now is it feels like he's also going through character development, even though it's happened away from the camera. That's what the best part of this world is all these characters feel like they're real characters and have all seen some things instead of it feels like sometimes in TV shows where you don't see a character for a while or you see them for the first time and it feels like they just got dropped into that scenario.
It's almost like that ex machina feeling of it's like when somebody pulls the robe off and they have the new suit and it's just what happened in the time being for all this to happen. That's not this universe. This universe, this is horrible. They've seen some stuff, they've gone through so much, and they're now acclimating to the new world and they're kind of getting situated. And Tommy is situated, so where this episode picks up is it's 3 months after Henry and Sam, much like the game does, and I said differences are good. You want the differences. I know there's slight things that you would want or slight things that you don't want. The one thing that I still wish that I'm gonna fight, but you don't get the ending of 5 with what I want, but what I wanted was Henry takes his life and then the episode ends. I think that was what was so potent about the game is that. I remember I texted you immediately and I turned the game off. Henry ends his life and I I had like a visceral reaction. I needed to turn the game off and just like I was just sitting there for a little bit. I'm like I'm not playing anymore. And then it just cuts 3 months later. You're looking for Tommy and you're looking for Jackson, or you're looking for Jackson and you find out Tommy's there. But you just at that point it's very like you don't want to feel anything for a little bit, but you're feeling too much emotion. But you head into episode 6 and now it's later. We find 2 new characters out in the cabin, kind of secluded from everybody else, and they're hilarious. They're probably the 2 funniest characters in this whole universe so far.
Yeah, for sure.
So just an older married couple
have just been surviving.
Just been surviving, and you gotta get this feeling that maybe they were surviving before that. Maybe they're very secluded, and it feels like they've been comfortable like that for a while. Yeah, they did win. They did win.
In the kind of the same way that Bill won.
I was gonna say the same thing. It's very much a Bill and Frank situation where like we keep seeing these places that are like either these communities or these, families or like these couples that are just keep winning in these situations. It's just like, thank you, Craig Mazin, and Neil Druckmann for kind of showing us you can win in these winless scenarios. But then that also amplifies when they don't win, like your Tessas, your Henry and Sam's, like it gets amplified, or Sarah's, like it gets amplified times a million.
Absolutely.
So, we pick up with them. Joel's got them at gunpoint. The husband walks back in and he's just like, "Oh crap! I'm not scared. You're not going to do anything." And they're like, "Hey, I need to get to Jackson." Why?
Well, they ask him if you know anyone named Tommy. No, like there's nothing out west except like awfulness.
Death. Like you're gonna find infected. You're gonna find writers. Like you're not gonna find anything but like the worst possible things out west.
You're gonna find this like. There's people out there that are just leaving bodies in the woods and like in the wilderness, and you're like, oh, ... Don't cross the river,
right?
That's a very like poignant note, and this I like this beginning a lot because you're starting, obviously a big kind of hammer of this episode is like Joel's vulnerability, and they really lean into that in the beginning of this episode. Like he's falling asleep while he's on watch, he's constantly retaping his boots, and he's just this is really the first time in the show where you feel like the weight on him. You know what I mean? Like, you really feel it. Like you get it in moments earlier in the season, but in this episode in particular, that culminates in the conversation he has with his brother. Is like you really feel like the weight of everything that's happened to them is really like coming down on him at this point. And, that's exemplified when they're on watch and Joel falls asleep and Ellie's like, well, I took the initiative and I took over your watch.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a second about Ellie and how she's evolving from episode 1 to episode 6. But again, to my point about the realism of this, it's not video game Joel of like, you can take a million. And that's, I keep going back to this quote that Craig Mazin said about death being trivial. Like, this is what he means. It's like, if you get stabbed or shot in the game, you just get to replay it. Like, you don't get to replay that in real life. You have to suffer the consequences of that in real life, and that's what Joel's going through right now in the show, is that he's feeling the burdens of what he's transpiring, and it's really, and Pedro Pascal is doing a wonderful job personifying that onto screen. He's doing great. So they leave their new best pals. They leave them. They're on the road, like you said. So Ellie's keeping watch, or Joel's trying to keep watch. He's like still arm's length, maybe like half an arm length now with Ellie. It's like he's getting the barriers coming down a little bit, but he's still keeping it up. He still wants that, level of safety so he doesn't have to feel any more emotion than he's already, spent in his life in the last 20 years. So you're showing that he is vulnerable, physically vulnerable. Like, but what's more important is that he's starting to become emotionally vulnerable. But we'll get there. So yeah, he falls asleep. He's deaf in one ear, like he's falling asleep on watch when he's supposed to be protecting her. But the other side is, what's Ellie doing? Ellie's picking up everything that he's doing, and she knows to check her 6. She knows to get the high ground. She knows all these things just by watching him and watching what he does, because I don't think he's expressly explaining it to her, but I think he is, she's just picking up. And it's crazy that this episode's called Kin. Like, that's what do children do. Children look up to, like, as much as you don't think you're influencing your kids, you your kids pick up a lot of like subtleties from you, and I think this is an example of that.
Yeah, totally agreed. And then, they're just walking along, and Ellie's like, this doesn't seem so bad. Like, this isn't as bad as they made it
Why
out
would
to
you
be.
ever say that in any type of
Immediately surrounded. They get immediately run up on by a bunch of people on horseback with guns. So these are well-off people that have horses, they have guns, they have ammunition. They're like, where are you going? Where are you headed? And Joel's like, I'm just looking for my brother. And they're like, we'll be the judge of whether you're looking for your brother or not. They send a dog out to see if they're infected, and that makes Joel extremely nervous to the point where he's having like a heart attack, like a panic attack, because of he knows obviously that Ellie's infected. And then it's a great tension builder and tension breaker, this moment, because you also don't know, like, oh shoot, is this dog gonna sense that she's infected, and they're gonna have to explain away the immunity and all that. But no, the dog just pals up to Ellie and he goes, I'm looking for my brother Tommy. And then this one woman's like,
Tommy, you say?
Tommy, you say? I know a Tommy.
Yeah.
Is your name Joel by any chance? And he's like, boy, howdy is it, my name Joel. And they take them in, and we're introduced to Jackson, which is
a thriving community.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's so great finally in the show to see. You're not seeing an oppressive quarantine zone. You're not seeing Bill's town.
And it's where it takes place, because you just saw that you saw the worst of humanity. Now you get to see, what the best of humanity.
It's a great juxtaposition between Kansas City and Jackson, because they're both communities are founded on the same ideals of, people being free to do whatever they want. But like the people of Jackson have taken it upon themselves to basically rebuild kind of a semblance of old society.
Yeah. I'll even go further. It's almost like the outside looking in versus the inside looking out, because Kansas City's supposed to be like, all right, outside looking in, like, it's a Fedra camp, like, we're all good, it's a quarantine zone, but on the inside it's horrible. On the outside of Jackson it's horrible, but like on the inside it's sanctuary. I think that's that's even further in the juxtaposition. I think that's pretty interesting.
They have kids.
They have
school. They have places of worship. They have movie nights.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go into the movie night. I listened to the Last of Us podcast, which is incredibly hosted by Troy Baker and then explained by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. And one of the things that that Craig was saying, and why he's such a great artist himself, is he talked about art in like end of world scenarios. I thought it was the one thing that really stuck out to me. Like, if you think about these, like, what just popped into my head, like The Martian. I don't know why that pops into my head, but like when he's listening to 70s music, and it's just like he's in an end of life scenario, but like the art piece is what's sticking out to him and giving him joy. Like, what was the other part of the show, which was like a good piece that had art in it? It was Frank. Frank in a good piece had like, he was concerned about like how this place looks, like this is still our home. Same thing with Jackson, like they're able to thrive and have movie nights so art can still survive. I thought that was a really interesting concept.
Really great. And then big reunion, Tommy and Joel reunited.
I think my point holds steady about what happened between Henry and Sam is double down with Joel and Tommy. Like,
absolutely,
I think Joel is like, and it's a departure of the game of like it's a little bit less of like it's a little bit like, oh shoot, like haven't seen you in a while, versus in the show it's like Joel's like, I'm so glad you're alive.
Well,
and
it also goes back to the change all the way from episode 1, where Joel's whole impetus for leaving Boston is to see his brother, to find his brother. Like, that was never apparent in the game. And then, I mean, a lot of departures from the game in this particular situation. Like, in the game, Tommy takes a much more kind of passive nature to what they did in the past, where Joel shouts at him at one point, like, I survived, like I did this for you, like I took care of you, kept you alive all these years, and Tommy says wasn't worth it. Whereas in this Tommy takes a lot more accountability and responsibility for what they did. Like, they have that conversation where he's like, we didn't just do things, Joel, we murdered people. Like, that, using the we there is super important, because like I said, it's not made that way out to be in the game. But they reunite, and we find out that the woman that stopped Joel in the wilderness was Maria, which is Tommy's wife, which is great. Tommy's starting a family, basically, in this in this world where that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah, and it's like, death to birth is such a, an opposite factor. And I mean, from the transition from, it's crazy, like the back half of this show, like 6, 7, 8, 9, like the first 5 in the, the weighting of the scales, like immediate death to birth, I think is something that's really, poetic. And it's a great show. This show is incredibly structured, and like, they had a challenge, in my opinion, of how the game's laid out versus how the show is going to be laid out, because there's a lot of joining things for the game, or for the show, that the game, has all the time in the world that they want to make it to kind of, space everything out that they want. But I think they've done a masterful job of, like, picking what they want to have cut off in episodes or keeping what they want full episodes. I think that started in episode 1 too, because you easily could have ended episode 1 with Sarah's death. But I think it's important going further, and I think it's like, I'm going to pick out Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, one issue I have with that show is, like, you don't see the 2 main characters meet in the first episode. Like, you probably want them to meet in the first episode, and even for a little bit, but, like, episode 1 goes as far to, like, develop the first initial reaction to each other. Like, the visceral first reaction you'll have to a person, like, the judgmental factor, like you have, and now see how far they've come. That's development.
Yeah, it's perfect. And, and then it's Ellie getting introduced to the community, like a situation that she's foreign to, because she grew up in a military school in a quarantine zone. So this is totally new territory for her.
She's got a pot. She's like the bad kid that moves into town.
Yeah.
She's got like a horrible mouth, like standoffish. Like, she's not afraid to step up to adults, anything like that. Like, she has all that under her belt. And it's funny, Maria takes notice to it immediately, and Maria's like, ooh, you're gonna what happened to Tommy's gonna happen to you. And like, I think Maria's gonna have to live with the fact that maybe Tommy did what he had to do, or Joel's just it's what Bill was talking about, like, Joel's a protector. Protectors usually have influence. That's what Joel is here. So
yeah.
They're sick for doing the Sarah bait and switch. Oh man.
It's a great callback, because, it's the beauty of having Sarah departed in the first episode and then not even showing her again until this episode. Like, it brings everything around, like, full circle. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, there's a woman with the same hair that Sarah had from the first episode.
It's Christmas,
and Joel is like, there's, like, I've seen some stuff, but there's no way, right? And then, but it's just this idea, like, and that woman has a child too. So it's like, it's 20 years later, like, that probably should have been Sarah there. We probably all should have went to Jackson, me, her, Tommy, and just lived the rest of our lives out here safe.
Yeah.
But
and
no.
Then that leads to the impetus where Joel's like, look, I have this girl. Originally he says under the guise of she's some Firefly bigwig's daughter.
Yep.
And look, I've taken her as far as I can go, Tom. So can you kind of just get her where she needs to go? Like, you can do it. You're younger than me. You're stronger than me. You're capable. Like, can you just do it? And Tommy's like, nope,
absolutely not. And you get revealed that Tommy's starting a family. Maria's pregnant, and Tommy's going to be a father. And it's like, that's probably also jarring for Joel to be like, oh man, like, Joel's probably so cynical. He's like, oh, what happened to, even though you're in this nice sanctuary, what happened to Sarah can happen to your kid now. Like, I guarantee you those thoughts are running through his head as well. But
and then Tommy Man just,
Gabriel Luna starts putting up a performance.
Hits him just with the deepest cut that Tommy could have given Joel in that moment, where, like, just because the world stopped for you that day doesn't mean it had to stop for everybody else. And you're like, phew. But he's also right. Like, like, how can you come to here, like, to this place that I've helped foster, and ask me to step away from my family just because you can't
bear to lose yours? Yeah. It's like, stop bringing your grief here. Like, your grief is expired for me, man. Like, that's not how it's supposed to. You shouldn't infect everybody around you.
Yeah, and it's totally legitimate. Like, it sucks. Like, it's sad to see Tommy react that way, but it's totally justified. Like, no, man. Like, the world, like he said, the world didn't stop for everybody else that day. Like, it goes back to, like, what you said about episode 1, like, the fact that, Joel's world ended that day. But for everybody else, including his brother, like, they all had to move on.
Yeah, they had to endure and survive. Like, Joel's been enduring, but he's been surviving, but I mean, mentally, he hasn't been enduring any
And that's
of
all coming to a head this episode with the panic attacks and his chest problems and all that. Like, it's all coming to a head now. So, Maria, in the meanwhile, is kind of like, trying to warm up Ellie, and it's not totally working, but it's working enough. They start talking about, Maria was a lawyer. She's a DA.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to go farther. The second mother figure that Ellie had was Tess, and Tess and Maria are different. They're tough, like they're both tough in their own right, but like weighing like good people, like Maria's a better person than Tess, but like Ellie took so closely to Tess because that's just who Ellie is. So she's probably even more standoffish to Maria. Like, I lost my second mom, and now you're trying to.
She's warmed up so much to Joel that to hear anyone like
say anything bad about him is just like watch your mouth a little bit. And she checks her in a moment, like, Tommy. Sorry, I'm not as dumb as Tommy, and like I can make my own decisions unlike he could.
Yeah.
Like, sorry to tell you this about your husband to your face, but...
And then, the bomb finally gets dropped on Ellie about what happened to Joel in the breakout. The death of Sarah, because she sees like a little memorial. Maria also lost a child, which is kind of a good kind of juxtaposition, right? But like Maria and Joel both have this shared trauma. Yep. And look how Maria's responded versus how Joel's responded. Like it's night and day, but there's also no right or wrong way to respond to that. Like, it's just two people growing up in a world just very differently. And so we get to movie night, and
before we get to movie night, spoilers ahead if you haven't played The Last of Us. When they're sitting at the table, somebody's just peeking over at Ellie. One of the kids is peeking over at Ellie, and she's just like, "What are you looking at, you stupid idiot?" Is that who I know that ain't who I think it is.
It is indeed, I believe. There was a lot of obviously people who aren't aware of The Last of Us Part 2.
They're probably like, "Get away, kid."
Won't know this, but there was a lot of Last of Us Part 2 foundation laying in this episode.
Great, which I think is a great idea, because
I agree.
Season 2 is going to be Part 2, so...
Yeah, so it wasn't a mistake that like the showrunners were like, "We're going to spend some time in Jackson because this place is going to be important later." But yeah, so it's movie night, and Tommy steps away because Joel isn't there, conspicuous by his absence. Tommy goes to find Joel, and they have a real all cards on the table, final Joel laying it all out there, pleading.
Oh, the most vulnerable, show and game, the most vulnerable I've ever seen Joel Miller. And it's just, this is the best, this is some of the best work Pedro Pascal's ever done in his career. Like, this is the mental baggage that he's, like, I'm broke, like
this is, he's hit his point of no return.
Yeah,
he truly can't go on anymore.
I'm physically broken, but like Tommy, I'm also mentally broken. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, she's getting to that point for me. I can't have this again. I can't.
He lays it all on the table. He says she's immune. I've seen it. It's real. I can't protect her. I can't go on. Can you please take her to the Fireflies? Like, I'm like, his big, strong older brother is literally pleading with him, probably in the most vulnerable state he's ever seen him in.
He's crying too, like, while he's saying it. Like, I didn't think I was ever gonna get this out of like Joel Miller, but like, I'm glad I did, because again, you could be as tough as you want, but like you said, all cards on the table, you're probably gonna break down a little bit, and like, this is truth. Like, this is nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Yeah, and Tommy relents. He says, "Okay, like, I'll take her at dawn, and that's it. Like, I'll do this." And Joel even says, like, "You can't tell Maria about any of this. You just have to go." So Tommy returns to the movie. He gives Maria like a look, and then he turns away from her, and like, she knows like something clearly has happened with Joel. And in the meantime, Ellie had been outside, and then Joel goes back to where they were staying, and the light in the bedroom is on, and Ellie reacts.
It's the part. This is the part that even people that haven't played the game, some of them had seen this. People that played the game, it's one of the most infamous pieces of gaming history. It's the famous, dialogue between Joel and Ellie about, about Sarah, about their journey together. Like, this is the climax of their story, essentially. So
Ellie's extremely cold to him, and she asks him, like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I'm staying here. And she's like, no, what are you doing, like, here now? Like, shouldn't you be gone? Like, shouldn't you be leaving? Like, that's what you're doing anyway.
Yep.
Like, she snaps on him. And, she's like, I'm sorry, Joel, but I'm not your daughter.
I'm not her,
Yeah. Because he starts by saying, like, Tommy's better suited for this. Like, I can't. And then she's like, just cut the crap. Like, I'm not your daughter. I'm not Sarah. And he's like, don't mention my daughter. Like, don't. And she's like, look, and it's kind of the same thing that Tommy told him, basically. Like, I've lost people too. Like, we've all lost people. Like, it's not just you. And then he goes, you have no idea what loss is. And she's like,
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. Everybody that I've ever loved in my life is either gone or dead. So,
and then she doesn't explicitly name Henry and Sam and Tess, but we've seen her lose those people. We've seen how, especially the death of Henry and Sam affected her. Like, he's just so protective over his own grief for his daughter that he doesn't feel like anyone can relate. When Maria can certainly relate, Ellie can relate. Tommy also lost Sarah that day, so it's, it is what it is. And Ellie says, like, you can say that I'd be better off with your brother, but the truth is I'd just be more scared because I've lost everyone except for you. And, and then Joel coldly tells her, like, you're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. And that's how they leave it till the next morning. And then, Tommy's picks Ellie up. We're ready to go. And Joel's out in the stables.
Yep.
And he's like, look, I'm going to give you a choice. Like, I realize I shouldn't have taken the choice from you. And Ellie, without hesitation, throws her sack at Joel. And she's like, let's go. And all's well that ends well. Or so you think. Because this is still The Last of Us.
Yep.
They get to the university and...
Go Bighorns.
Go Bighorns. They're really bonding at this point.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This
he's succumbing to it. That's his...
This argument has strengthened their bond.
Yeah.
He's teaching...
They needed it. They needed the tough love, and they needed the Band-Aid to be ripped.
Yeah.
And, like, again, for even that, like, it sucks that Joel had to go from back to back the toughest conversations that he's probably had in 20 years.
But he needed it.
Yeah,
he emerges from it kind of a different person.
Yep.
And he's teaching her how to shoot the long gun, and they're really bonding over that. They're bonding over football.
Yep.
Joel's teaching her the rules of American football.
So what's a fourth down?
Yeah.
He says contractors are the most respected job in America before the fall.
Like, they've really warmed up to each other.
He's like smiling,
joking. Tells her that he wanted to be a singer. They had exchanged dreams earlier on in the episode. Joel said he wanted to raise sheep on a ranch, and then he goes, I changed my mind. Like, you said I could be anything, right? And he's like, I always wanted to be a singer. And she's like, oh, man, you got to sing for me when this is all over. She's like, I'm going to save the world, man. The least you can do is sing for me. And he's like, all right, fine.
I can't. I'm thinking about part two, but I can't, man.
And, they get to the college, and conspicuous by their absence are the Fireflies.
Yep.
There's nobody there.
Except for laboratory monkeys just running around the university.
Maybe they turned themselves into monkeys. Like Ellie says.
I just don't think that's it. But.
No Fireflies. It's abandoned. They discover that the Fireflies have evacuated this campus and have moved further west to Utah, to Salt Lake City. And just as they're about to head out to the next location, raiders show up. A band of raiders show up. They try to get out the back. Joel gets into a scuffle. He snaps the neck of the man, but, he said it himself. He's not as spry as he once was. Looks down. He's been stabbed by a makeshift shiv.
Yeah, probably like the blunt end of a baseball bat stabs him.
Yeah, he pulls it out. Never pull it out.
Yeah, leave it in, John Watts.
Leave it in, Joel Miller.
Yeah.
They get on the horse, and then we pan to probably a half hour later, maybe, and Joel falls off his horse and dies. Like, that's presumably. Ellie's pleading with him, like, I can't do this on my own. Like, don't do this to me, and then end of episode.
This one, along with episode 1, I think are the 2 best shot episodes just from a movie making or show making perspective. They both look gorgeous, but I think this one stands out amongst, like, because one's in its own field. Like, one's like one of the best episodes of television, like as like every aspect of television that you can watch. I think 3's the best episode of the show so far, but like in terms of like, you know, everything that makes, you know, movie making and show making incredible, I think 1 encompasses every aspect of that. But this episode looks incredible. Next episode is going to be Left Behind, so it's the Ellie origin story next week. And if Pedro Pascal put up his Emmy performance this week, I think Bella Ramsey's going to put up her Emmy performance next week and then some. Just from the promo, it looks incredible. We're going to get introduced to Storm Reed as her best friend Riley. And yep. I can't wait. I can't wait. This show, it's not failing. Like, it's just, usually, even in season, like, I think, what was it, episode 5 of episode 6 of House of the Dragon ran into that wall? It was either 4 or 6. Like, usually, even these great seasons of shows that we talk about all the time, like, they usually run into a wall, and like an unmovable wall that you just, and it happens. Like, storytelling's tough. Like, I don't think people, even the worst, and we're going to talk about Ant-Man in a little bit. Even the things we think are horrible they're incredibly difficult to make, but this show has not hit that wall yet, and they figured the pacing out. They knew exactly how they wanted the show paced, and it shows. Yeah, I just implore everybody to go listen to the Last of Us podcast.
Listen to this podcast.
Listen to this first. Craig Mazin, you jerk. Why would you do that to Henry and me? I know Neil Druckmann did it, but I don't care, man. You did it in live action, which makes you worse. But
right.
Go listen to that podcast, because it's just, I enjoy listening to Craig Mazin speak. You know that song at the end of the episode? That was his daughter singing. Oh. If you guys didn't know, yeah, Craig Mazin's daughter is actually a singer. And he actually contracted her, because contractors are the coolest things in the world, contracted her to sing that
nepotism,
song.
Eh?
Oh, he even said it in the podcast that he's like, he understands the nepotism debate, but he doesn't care. And that is The Last of Us, episode 6, Kin, and we're looking forward to episode 7. I think I just, if that's going to be a prelude to what Bella Ramsey's going to do in season 2,
yeah,
because she's the main character.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's amazing. It's astounding. The show astounds me every week that it's as good as it is. But we do have to move on. We have two quick bits of news, but that's really it as far as the news is concerned. So I Am Legend, the classic, the classic Will Smith film, has been discussed getting a sequel for forever, forever and ever and ever. Michael B. Jordan has always been attached to it for some reason, and it's happening. It's real.
Play his son, to play Jaden Smith, right?
Who knows? Because, dun dun dun, the plot of this is going to do something that's never been done before.
I think it might have been, I feel like I read it was done once for something, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, so we are officially going to be canonizing the alternate ending, the DVD cut ending of I Am Legend.
You remember DVDs?
I'm aging myself here, but for those of you...
Don't say DVDs are aging yourself. Don't say it like that.
They are. For those of you who don't know, the original ending of I Am Legend was Will Smith explodes himself, and the woman and the son go to the survivor camp, and they go, he really was a legend, wasn't he? He was great.
and then Linkin Park starts playing.
But the alternate ending, which people who had seen it at the time were like, this should have just been the real ending, where he and the Dark Seekers, great name for a creature, by the way, the Dark Seeker. So he had been experimenting on a Dark Seeker for this entire thing, and he's been also being hunted by the Dark Seekers. So the Alpha Dark Seeker shows up at his house, and he's like,
Alpha Dark Seeker. What was the ending of that movie?
He's like, release the other Dark Seeker. Well, he doesn't say that because he can't talk. So Will Smith just thinks they're trying to kill him, but Will Smith finally realizes, like, oh, this is the mate of the Alpha. That's why he's so angry, because I kidnapped his mate. And he lets the mate go with the Alpha, and he goes to the survivor encampment with the woman and the son, and he goes, I am legend at the end. So the sequel will be picking up off that ending several decades after the ending of several decades after the alternate ending of the first movie, we will be getting I Am Legend 2.
Will Smith's going to be in this movie for all that I know. Like, I'm cool if Michael B. Jordan's just his son, but older, and then, like, I guess we're in this... Are we back in the zombie phase? We were out for a while, but I guess we're back in.
I guess. This is so confusing to me.
This feels like an interesting take, because I Am Legend's like a classic. Like, that movie is
it's quite good. Yeah.
It's quite good. It's a big deal in terms of like the zombie genre. Like, in terms of the movie, like, it was like was that not one of the first ones of the modern age that was like, oh, zombies can actually be taken seriously?
Yeah, post-apocalyptic.
Yep.
You know, that kind of grounded in reality. Like, it's in New York City, all that stuff. So, yeah, the fact that they're just like, we're just going to do the alternate ending.
It's nuts.
It's so crazy to me. Because, like, now people, like, you know, not everyone's familiar with the alternate ending of I Am Legend.
No. I feel like that's like a cult classic, like a cult fan thing to know the alternate ending.
Yeah, it's like one of those like trivia questions.
Right.
Like, do you know the alternate ending?
Did you know there was an alternate ending to this?
Yeah, like, you don't do this. You don't canonize the alternate endings.
Right.
It's so bizarre. But they can.
Because Will Smith's not the guy at the Oscars, so he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I guess.
We're coming up on the anniversary of that.
Is this like the ultimate version of like reviving a franchise some odd years after? Because they're doing that, but also canonizing an alternate ending?
This is probably going to do a better job than the DCEU's going to do.
Like, you know, we did The Matrix, we're doing Indiana Jones, like, we did Scream, like, but all of those have been following, like, the plots. Even The Matrix followed the plot of the original Matrixes. and that's probably the most outlandish one.
Yep.
But, like, and even that was like, we sort of followed the plot of the first three. But this is just like, hey, remember that alternate ending? It's crazy. Give me iRobot 2 now, if we're just going to be doing this with Will Smith.
You know
movies.
how we feel about that's like, all right, on the whiteboard that we have, like, iRobot is high on that list.
Yeah, it's super high. So give me
Shia
iRobot
LaBeouf
2.
was in that movie.
He was.
He was in that movie.
Oh, I forgot about that. Dude, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's all I really got to say. It's just nutty that they're canonizing an alternate ending. That's absolutely insane.
Michael B. Jordan's probably gonna have fun.
Yeah, and then
I'm Legend. The horror's back.
They are legends.
They are legends. There you go. We are legends.
We are legend.
The last of the legends.
And then the only other bit of news I have is The Marvels has been delayed to November 10th, fresh with a new poster. Mm-hmm. Quite like that poster.
Me too. I think it's a dope poster. We're gonna see the people mad that there's 3 women leading a movie, but nobody said anything when like Civil War was happening.
Yeah. It's
almost like it's an invalid argument.
3 characters that have been built up pretty strongly. Yeah. At least it's weird that Captain Marvel's been built up the least strongly.
But I think that might be the best thing, because I think she has the best room for like the I'm here moment.
I hope so.
I think, and Brie Larson is an Oscar winner. Like, people are forgetting that she's actually a good actress.
Yeah, she's in Fast 10. I don't know what else.
Oh no, she's actually the best actress then. Yeah, move over, Kate Blanchett and Tar.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm excited. I think my favorite one out of that, funny enough, is probably Tiana Paris is the one I want to see the most. She was I thought great in WandaVision, and she's just got such this energy and like that idea of mystery and wonder. She like embodies that for me too. So I think it's gonna be fun.
And there's still the unresolved tension.
Yes, I can't wait for that. I hope they don't diminish that. And also Nia DaCosta is pretty solid behind the camera, so I think that's a good swing for her to take is one of these Marvel movies. And also, I guess the other thing we can go into, and I think it's going to be the perfect transition into talking about Ant-Man, is the state of Marvel right now. We spent a lot of time talking about it last week. Mm-hmm. Or we talked more about we talked about the state of Marvel, but also the state of like movies right now, and how things are different. So it seems like they're getting back into what was going on before. I think for me it was 2014 to 2019 was the prime era. Like, that was like, after Iron Man 3, like, is Iron Man 3 in phase 1? I think Iron Man 3 technically is in phase 1. No,
it
is the beginning of phase 2.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about it as like a Far From Home situation, but yeah, like 2014, so like Captain America 1, and then, or Captain America Winter Soldier all the way to Endgame, like that's the prime thing that you want out of those movies. Like,
well, now that, I mean, honestly, now that they've delayed the Marvels, like, they're kind of back on that track.
yes.
Just with a couple of shows inserted.
Right, yeah, well, that was my point of like, you remember back in like, for those 5 years, like, there was only 2 to 3 movies a year. There wasn't 3 movies and then
4 shows,
yeah, 3 to 4 shows and then an animated like, there was just 2 to 3 movies. And like, every time they came out, like, there was like, that you felt something for them, and like they all felt connected, but some of the project, not all of them, but some of the projects felt strong by themselves and like solid character introductions, and then the team up movies were all solid at the very least. They were solid. Like, you felt this energy behind them that I think is lacking a little bit right now. And just pushing the Marvels back, like, so now you're gonna leave some of these movies rooms to breathe, because I think that was what was happening. It was just like, and then also like, oh, do you need to see this to see this? Like, give people time to see Miss Marvel. I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like people think this is a horrible idea, but like the ABC side of it, like, because the Mandalorian's debuting on ABC, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, before it even hits Disney Plus.
Yes, and that's gonna be on Monday.
Yeah.
Soon. It's next week.
Yeah.
So we're almost there, but maybe you air Miss Marvel like in October, maybe. Like, you air Miss Marvel on ABC, like, either do like the episode, or maybe do it week to week leading up to the Marvels. Like, maybe air an episode each week and try it like that. Just put it like, obviously ABC Friday night, Thursday night, whenever you want to do it, 8:00, just throw them on there. Throw all the episodes on there. And then just get, the people, because you need like the people that don't have Disney Plus or don't care about the internet, none of that stuff. You need those people to watch too. And,
agreed. We're going to talk about that when we talk about at least one post-credit scene in Ant-Man.
Right, yep. So yeah, the spacing I think is good. I mean, a lot of the mystique is gone from Marvel too. I think that's one of the issues, and as much as I like some of them, it's the shows that lost some of the mystique, because like, there was an idea of everybody went to the theater and we saw this thing and then you walked out talking about it. But now, like, we heard the chatter like a couple hours ago when we just saw Ant-Man, like, oh, did you watch this TV show? And there wasn't that before. Like, you didn't have to ask people if they saw the movie before. They saw the movie before. So a lot of that's gone, but I think it's good that they're pushing it back. Gives time for the VFX artists to work. But
so now we're going to do 3 movies and 2 shows.
3 movies, 2 shows, which is
just
better than...
in 2023.
Right, because 2021 was...
insane.
2021 had 4 movies? Or 3... Oh, 2021 had 4, because it was Black Widow. Black Widow came out in 2020 or 2021?
I don't know, man.
I think it came out in 2020, I think. But still, I can tell you right now, actually.
2021.
So, it was Black Widow to Shang-Chi to the Eternals to Far From Home. And that was on top of... How many shows did we get on top of that, too? We got Loki, we had WandaVision, we had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and What If, all in that same year, too. So 4 movies, 4 shows in 1 year. Crazy.
It's too much.
It is. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's way too much.
Yep.
So it's cool that we're kind of... This was always like my vision for it. Like when the Disney Plus stuff started happening, like 3 movies, 2 shows. Movie in the beginning, then a show, then a movie, then a show, then a movie. That's it.
I'm a big believer you need to end it on a movie. Don't end it on a show.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I think I would not be shocked if this is the formula going forward, and I also would not be shocked if that means some of these shows end up not being shows.
And I'm not also going to even go farther, as I don't think possibly all these shows aren't going to be made.
Correct.
I'm looking at Echo specifically, because if Daredevil Born Again is going to be 18 episodes...
18 episodes, though?
That's a lot of episodes. If Daredevil's going to be 18 episodes, do you need an Echo show? Like, and it's also a budgetary thing. Like, are you going to spend the budget to make an Echo show where you could just put her in Daredevil Born Again and just put the money into, like, that's how I would do it. Like,
and I don't think it shorts the character one bit if you do that.
And then also, Agatha Covenant of Chaos, like, I would have rather much... Why don't you just take that and maybe merge that and the Vision show into one and like follow up with Vision maybe? Like, I'm cool with an Agatha show, but
I think well, my big brain theory on what this Agatha thing is gonna do is it's not only gonna tie into the ultimate fate of the Scarlet Witch, but I think it's also gonna tie into Doctor Strange.
They're gonna meet?
I think so. I think they're gonna end up looping Agatha in with Strange because they kind of share the same corner.
Yep.
Especially with the big guy, the big capital M guy that's been looming since WandaVision came out. And it just feels like between Wanda, Agatha, and Strange, they're all kind of occupying the same corner. So I think this Agatha show is gonna end up being weirdly important, at least for the mystical side of the Marvel Universe.
And then there's the Young Avengers stone that's not been flipped yet. That keeps getting, tossed at the river, but nobody's going back to retrieve it yet.
Right. Yeah, so cool. So I guess we're gonna jump right into Ant-Man QuantuMania. So I got some numbers.
Yeah, read some numbers, and I'll talk about some movie stuff.
So this is right now it's battling with the Eternals for the worst rated critical Marvel movie of all time. Seems odd.
I'll talk about that in a second.
And viewership wise, it's being received quite well.
Yeah.
84% on Rotten Tomatoes among viewers, 47% among critics, as I mentioned. Box office is doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's doing decent.
Doing quite strong. It's
all right.
I think it was saying that China was really the only low point, but I think China's still having weird COVID stuff that they're dealing with.
And they've got other things that happened in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I think China was really the only place that quote unquote underperformed, but everyone else it's been pretty strong, was bolstered by a 4-day weekend here in America.
4-day weekend, we just had a President's Day. The theater was decent when we just went today. It's President's
Day. And it was pretty
Day
packed.
today.
We went on Thursday night also, and it was Marvel.
It had the energy, but then you need to execute. And let's talk about this movie. Yeah.
We'll talk some non-spoilers first.
Sure.
Since we didn't do our non-spoiler review, so we'll do some non-spoilers first. And I guess non-spoiler wise, I guess we could just focus on performances.
Yeah, performance and feeling about the movie.
Yeah, so let's just start with the performances. So obviously we'll just go top billing down. So we'll start with Paul Rudd.
Top billing is David Dastmalchian. No, just kidding.
We'll start with Paul Rudd. He's great. I think
this is probably the second best he's been, because I still think Avengers Endgame is the best that he's been.
Well, I think we both agree that he almost steals that movie.
Yeah, he does, yeah. You just repackage that movie that movie's better repackaged as an Ant-Man movie than this movie's repackaged as an actual Ant-Man movie.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. He's great. I mean, we talked about it a little bit beforehand. He plays a slightly different version of Scott than he's been before.
He probably is the most Avenger in Phase 4.
Yeah. It's weird, right?
It's not even... Thor doesn't feel that way, like...
He feels like he's actually bearing the burden of being an Avenger.
He's like the actual fallout of like asking where the Avengers are. Like, I think him and Peter probably feel that the most, of like, where's the Avengers? What's going on? Like, these world-ending events.
And I love the interesting thing, like the difference between him and Peter, because like Peter obviously had his own problems going on, but like presumably what Peter would have been doing is doing what he was doing, which is like fighting crime, stopping crime. But like where Scott's at, he's like,
I'm an Avenger.
I don't really. It's like the Oliver Queen from season 1 of Arrow, where he's like, I don't do petty crime, dig. Like, that's not my thing. Scott's kind of in the same boat. Like, he's like, I can't just Ant-Man around, like and, like stopping robbers.
I'm waiting for the next big event, and he says it in his book. Like, that's actually really available online. That you can actually. I'm not lying. Like, you can actually buy this book and read it. But he says, like, I can't. I'm not a person that can, like, I'm waiting for the next time the Avengers call me so I can go join them. And that's where Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang gets introduced to the story as, his heroic moral compass of, like, you always, you're a thief, you're a Robin Hood-esque thief, and now you're just a big boy Avenger. Like, whatever happened to looking out for the little guy that you always preach about?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of her insertion into the story.
And it's not like Scott's also, like, I think people got mixed up, like, when the leaks came out, like, Scott's not coming from a place of arrogance. He's still genuine. He's still, like, affable Scott Lang, but, like, he genuinely feels like he kind of, like, it's like he's been burdened with glorious purpose. Yeah. Like, that's kind of where Scott's at now. Like, and it's not a wrong thing for an Avenger to feel.
Yeah, and I mean, again, going back to our point, like, he does feel the most Avenger out of, Phase 4 / the beginning of Phase 5. Like, he does feel the most, like, I'm here to help the next time something happens. Like, nobody's ever talking about the Avengers, but, like, San Francisco heralds him, like, the same way that, like, New York heralds Spider-Man at this point. Like, he's their hero. Like, he's plastered everywhere. He's walking the streets.
And, look who his idol is. It's Captain America.
Right.
Captain America wasn't getting involved in nonsense.
No, Captain America's not a street level guy. We're either taking down Hydra, or we're fighting the Sokovia Accords, or we're fighting Ultron. Like, he's an Avenger. Like, Scott's on that echelon now, which I think is pretty good. And especially retroactively looking at Ant-Man and the Wasp, he needed that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess next highest billing would be Jonathan Majors, right? Kang the Conqueror.
I mean,
he's incredible.
Yeah, it's just... And I can't talk spoilers without talking about the other pieces that I didn't like, but nothing of that has to do with Jonathan Majors. Like, it's to the point because... I mean, I guess I'll talk about it now. I didn't love this movie. I don't. And I think one of the pieces is, like, I don't think Jonathan Majors deserves this. He deserves better than this. And, like, he shouldn't be in this movie.
But, man, does he make the most of it.
Oh my God. Just from the opening part with him, you're like, we talk about it every time we talk about Jonathan Majors from different projects to this. Like, every time he's on screen and anything you watch, you're like, he's one of those actors where you have to watch them. Like, you can't not just let their performances go past them.
Yeah. And I mean, the debate coming out of this movie is whether or not whether or not Kang rises to that Thanos level threat. And I think that's a little unfair to the character, because how Kang is being presented is night and day different from how Thanos was presented.
And also,
but I will say, before you get to your point, Majors has that gravitas that Brolin had as Thanos. Yep. It's the same gravitas. He's just being presented differently.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Brolin's almost like this brute with, like, a philosophical background. But, like, I think Jonathan Majors is, like, this Shakespearean level, like, even down to the way he pronunciates things, it's like Shakespearean almost. Like, he's almost like that classic, like, literature villain, but then has, like, the backup of, super smart Marvel villain that's, like, super powerful on top of that.
And I love the way he speaks in this movie. Because
he speaks. I want this guy to be in, like, a ancient movie about something. Like,
because if you were a man that exists kind of outside of time, who has seen everything, knows everything, like, you would be kind of bored. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you would be kind of, like, detached from things around you until the thing happens that you don't expect and you get riled up, which I really liked. Not diving into spoilers too much yet, but, like, when his plans do go awry and he comes across things that he doesn't see coming, that switch flips and you feel the rage, the inherent rage within that he's been kind of, you could tell has been fostering. Which is really great.
I like how subtle Jonathan Majors as an actor is. Like, I always thought, like, you're especially, drama. I talk about it with sci-fi specifically all the time. Like, often your best moments aren't the actual sci-fi. It's, like, the characters that personify the sci-fi. That's usually where you get the best piece of it. And I think Jonathan Majors gets that. Like, any project you throw him into, like, he's never, like, full send. He always waits for the full send. Like, he's very reserved, but it's just, like, he has just this everyman quality. And, like, I think his next evolution, and we're going to see it over the next couple months, because he has Creed 3 coming out in a couple weeks, and then he has Magazine Dreams, which is being described as, like, Pumping Iron mixed with Taxi Driver for, like, a character study. So he's got this, now he's letting, like, his physical acting show for himself, and I think he marries the both here, like that mental fortitude and the psychological and the philosophical. Now he's mixing it with that physical. Yeah.
So, I mean, can't say enough good things about him. I mean, his performance alone kind of raises the bar of this movie quite a bit.
It's just to the point where you're waiting for it, and I think that's another downfall of this movie is that, no spoil, he's not in it for as much as you would want your main villain to be in the story. Like, you compare him to some of the other, I mean, you look at Norman Osborn and Far From Home, he's in that movie quite a bit. Like, Jonathan Majors isn't nearly in this movie as much as, even Wen Wu, same thing. Like, Wen Wu's in that movie a decent amount. Like, Jonathan Majors is not in this movie a lot.
But one could argue he should have been in it even less. We'll talk about that when we talk about kind of not what went wrong with this movie, but not what went wrong. I would say just from the onset of just how it was structured. We'll talk about, but and then I guess we can loop these four actors into kind of the same boat. So Evangeline Lilly is back as Hope Van Dyne. Catherine Newton we talked about as Cassie Lang. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, and Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne.
On your bingo card, did you have Michelle Pfeiffer being the best performance out of those four? Because I didn't.
I do kind of feel like she was always the most interesting out of the four of them.
Sure.
And I felt like there was something there. I didn't expect her to tie into like the main plot of this movie as much as she did.
Yeah.
And I wish they would have leaned into that more.
Yeah.
Like I wish they kind of would have. Like I get it's a father-daughter thing, and you can't really insert Scott into this conflict without Cassie. But I do almost feel like Michelle Pfeiffer and Kang they're the protagonist antagonist in each other's lives.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that's where the conflict is. It's really between Janet and Kang instead of Scott and Kang.
Yep.
But because Cassie and everything
and because this is an Ant-Man movie,
right? But the core conflict is, and it's immediate. Like the beginning of the movie doesn't open with Scott; it opens with Janet.
Yeah.
In the quantum realm, like that's not a spoiler because it's the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like it starts with Janet meeting him. Like that's kind of a nutty kind of move, like in your Ant-Man movie to start the movie with Janet Van Dyne.
Yeah, I was thinking about the opening of these Ant-Man movies. I think my favorite opening's probably Ant-Man and the Wasp. Probably has my favorite opening with Hank and Janet kind of going on a mission because again, it's like
weird how they keep starting these movies with Janet, right?
Because she's the main character. But yeah, so they meet each other in the first 5. But I mean, rounding out, Michael Douglas feels in the first half almost like lost in this. Like he doesn't feel like he belongs in this, and it's just like I've seen Michael Douglas. Like we talked about it before we hopped on. Like Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas are like of the A-list actors in like the in the 80s and 90s. Like the most of A-list that you can ask for are the two of them. And they just Janet. Michelle Pfeiffer doesn't feel out of place, but Michael Douglas feels out of place. Like in universe, like he feels just off. And I think again, that's like it's not diving deeper into his time as actual Ant-Man. Like
he went from being Ant-Man to being the Ants-Man.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Which is like it's good. It's nice payoff, and I think it's like it's cool. But like again, this idea of like you pick up a comic and you think about like he's never felt like Ant-Man. Like he's felt like the Ants-Man, but like you said, but like he's never felt like Ant-Man. I think that's a disservice to like it would have been a rare opportunity. You know how Black Lightning's structured, and I talked about this, off like I love how Black Lightning is structured because like he's like a way past his prime guy that's putting the suit back on. Like even Hank not putting the suit back on, like I've never felt him as like Hank Pym comic Ant-Man. Like I've only felt him as like the crazy scientist at points, or like the
you feel it a little bit at the end,
right? But yeah.
Because, like, you're like, oh, this guy's kind of operating on another, like, mental level than everybody else. Yep. Which we'll talk about at the end. But, yeah, I agree. I feel like, he almost becomes caricature in the beginning in the top half of the movie.
He's just, like, polite grandpa.
Yeah.
Which is just, I think he kind of, I wish they would have leaned. I mean, it's funny, we talked about it before we hopped in here. We talked about Iron Man 3 and, like, not wanting to do the thing that's bad from the source material. So, like, for Tony, it was not doing Demon in a Bottle in Iron Man 3. Like, even the PTSD stuff, they just dealt with it. Like, it was just...
He's like, I'm fine.
I'm fine, yeah. Like, I
have PTSD.
But it was the suit the whole time. I just needed to be the man in Iron Man. Thanks, Harley.
I'm cured.
Wow. And then this movie, and same thing for Hank. It was very much of, like, guy like abused his wife. Like that's something like, and they talk about it in the first one, like how his mind is, and that's what happened to Darren. Like his mind started like deteriorating from using. Like they never lead into that after that. Like
no, it's just passively implied because he never suits up as Ant-Man. Yeah. So like it's passively implied that like that's the reason.
But then everybody, Scott's using the suit, Hope's using the suit. It's in the trailer. Cassie has a suit. Like, everybody's got a suit and everybody's fine. But Hank was just, like, his mind was, he was driving himself insane.
I guess also just because, like, he was working with formulas that weren't perfected yet, and this, that, and the other thing also. But also, at the same time, like, it does lean into the fact that, like, he, obviously, for those of you who may not know in the comics, Hank Pym is the architect of Ultron. Mm-hmm. We missed that boat, obviously, in the MCU, right. But we do get him being the architect of something equally dangerous in this.
In general, the Pym particles themselves are like, so MacGuffin-ish.
But he helps Cassie build the beacon to the quantum realm.
I want you to go into your point, because I think you made a really good point about Hank and, like, paying homage to the comic Hank.
Yeah, like, he's the architect. He helps Cassie orchestrate this quantum beacon that, drags them all to the quantum realm, and, is the impetus for Kang getting ready to escape. And it's weird that the only thing that struck me about Janet in this, and she's great in this, but the only thing that struck me as odd is she was so anti having anything to do with the quantum realm, and then her husband helps orchestrate this whole thing, and she's just like, it's fine. Like, I forgive you. Like, it feels like she should have been a little bit more pissed at him than she should have been.
This goes down to my point where this movie, like, I feel like this movie doesn't have a narrative.
This movie pulls a ton of punches.
Oh, it pulls almost every punch that it takes, and this was my same issue with Thor: Love and Thunder. Like, this is getting in, like, retroact. I mean, we talked, like, Phase 4, I guess, and there's projects in Phase 1. I mean, we talk about Phase 1 not being as glamorous as everybody thinks that it is, apparently. Yeah. Like, you can give me 3 movies out of the 5, or out of the 6 in Phase 1 that are, like, good to really good, and then the other 3 are not great. Like,
yeah,
you have Iron Man 2 in there, you have
Thor
in there, you have the Incredible Hulk. Like, these aren't movies that are awesome. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but Phase 4, I think, struggles a lot with. There's a lot of aspects that go into. I mean, one is budgetary. Like, that's a thing that I think is going into this, and it's like number 2 is like, it's talent. It's collaboration with your talent as a studio. Like, I feel like there's been, like, a deterioration of that. Like, something just feels wrong
in
right
some
now.
ways, but also not in others.
Yeah, like, I look at Shang-Chi and, like, I feel like Daniel Destin Cretton did a decent amount of that. And then I look at Ant-Man and I'm like, he did none of that. Like, I don't feel like Peyton Reed directed the first Ant-Man movie and directed, like, it feels like 2 different people directed those movies.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately comes down to because Kang was the villain.
Yep.
And he's Thanos, essentially. Like, and the studio was like, we need you to handle this character a certain way. Like, and we need you to kind of build this movie a certain way.
But I'm with my theory, though, that I think Kevin Feige stepped on set and was just like, all right, I'm going to do some stuff. And Peyton Reed's like, what happened to this movie I was going to be made? And then he said, what movie? And then Peyton Reed's like, all right, okay, so I'm going to do what you say. And he's like, yeah, you are going to do what I say, because we need this to go off without a hitch.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is, as a start to Phase 5, this is far from what you want to start to this is the true multiversal piece of your phase of, like, trying to introduce all these different versions of this guy. So yeah. It's kind of disappointing that this is the start that we get. And it just, so like I said, the budgetary piece of this movie feels cheap. Like, $130 million, which just isn't, and for a Marvel movie, that's not anything, that's not great, that's not high, but I see other movies being made, like, with, like, way lower budgets, and just, I don't know.
Well, I told you what I think about that, right? It's it's the cast.
Yeah.
The cast of these Marvel movies are inflating these budgets like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, because all these actors now, some because of the MCU, some because just they are who they are just the price tag is outrageous. Like I told you, Paul Rudd is making infinitely more money now than he was 10 years ago when he first signed on to be Ant-Man. I mean, he was already a pretty prestigious actor when he, but because of Ant-Man and because of Avengers, like, that price tag goes up. We saw it with Robert Downey Jr., we saw it with Chris Evans, we saw it with Chris Hemsworth, all those core Avengers, like, as those movies went on, their price tags went up. And now what Marvel's doing, pumping out so many projects, it's raising the price that much higher. That's like, you know, that's why, you know, Black Panther is such an interesting case, because none of them are really getting that kind of money besides Angela Bassett. Maybe.
And what was probably the best looking movie, the best shot movie, the best directed movie was Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also an ROI thing, return on investment. Like, they're not seeing the same return on investment because at least for a studio, you're making money back from the box office. Where does now this come into play? Now you're trying to get money back from a streaming service. That's not the same as getting money back from a box office.
And it also goes back to, even though this movie is starting Phase 5, it's also part of that compressed Phase 4 schedule. Like, it's on the same kind of time frame.
This movie feels like it could have been the end of Phase... This movie probably should have been the end of Phase 4. Like, narratively speaking, for, like, you know, the connective tissue, this feels like this is the last thing of Phase 4. Like,
because
it's the tease for the rest of the Kang, so, you know what I mean? Like, this feels very Phase 4-ish.
And then before we jump into spoilers, I guess we can just talk about Catherine Newton a little bit more. It's
funny that you didn't even talk about Evangeline Lilly.
Oh,
because I guess the non-spoiler for her is that you can cut her out of this movie, and the movie's the exact same.
You could have just replaced her and given everything she does with Janet.
You either could have, or you could have just put all of her burdens onto Cassie too, and it wouldn't have changed any. It might have been better if you did that.
I'm thinking of the ending in particular, like if that had been Cassie at the end instead of Hope. It's kind of nutty. Yeah,
and it just undoes everything that you did. And because I think, as I told you before we hopped on, outside of Scott, I feel like of the core Ant-Man team, I think Hope probably has had the most development from like 1 to 3, and it's just. Or 1 and 2 specifically, like, she had to, you know, step into her own. I know people, including myself, were excited in 2019 to see her actually be, you know, the Wasp this time and, like, you know, come onto the scene. I thought that was, and I think she did a really good job handling it. She was the Avenger-esque person in Ant-Man and the Wasp to Scott's bumbling idiot in that movie, and I think it played decent in that movie too. So it's just disappointing kind of to see, like, it's not even like she's a backseat driver. Like, she is just not. But she's not used.
She's just in the car.
She's just exactly. She's just in the car. She's reacting to the mom and dad rat-a-tat. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and then she has one moment at the end.
She has one moment, and then she just fires her blasters. That's it. That's her whole character in this movie.
Yeah. And then, like I was about to say, Catherine Newton.
I don't think it's her fault.
I don't think it's her fault either.
I'll give her an 80-20.
Yeah, I think it's writing. I think a lot of it's writing.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that.
I think a lot of it's writing. I think it's a lot of it. Like I told you, she's stepping into an already established character that's, you know, seen some stuff, and she's being asked to carry that character development despite having never been the character.
Yep.
And that's very difficult.
Yep.
And she's portraying the character at such a transformative and important moment of her character arc.
Not only hers, but Scott's too.
Yeah, like we've seen Cassie before, but she's stepping into heroism now, and that's a really tough burden to ask a new actor to do. Like it's
and that's not their own project.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's the first time they've done something like this since Don Cheadle, since they did, and even I would argue. Rhodey was not at the same level of character development that even Cassie was at this point. So, like,
Rhodey was just military best friend.
Yeah, so, like, you're asking Catherine Newton to basically step into the peak of this character's arc. Like, she's ascending to heroism at this point. Or she's not quite ascending to heroism, but she's stepping into the shoes of being a hero. Like, she's beginning her hero's journey, essentially. Whereas, and you're asking Catherine Newton to step into that shoe, and it's difficult. I think there's some promise there, particularly as it relates to how I think she can interact with, you know, presuming that the Young Avengers is a thing. I think she can interact quite well with that group of characters. You know, I'm thinking particularly of, you know, her and Kate Bishop.
I think they're
could be really great.
I think they're gonna, like, her, Kate Bishop, and Miss Marvel are probably gonna be a nice little trio in there.
Yeah.
And then you insert the rest of them in there. So I think I think that movie's going to be a Phase 6 movie. And the only reason I say that is because the Nathaniel Richards piece to the Kang saga in the multiverse saga. Like, I do think they're going to make a version of, I don't know who the actor's going to be, but I do think they're going to have a younger version of Kang, and it's going to be Nathaniel Richards that's going to lead that team. It's going to be like, all right, we're going to attack them this way. Like, if there's no real world Avengers, we're going to make our own Avengers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess before we jump into spoilers, just kind of just our quick just rating and like how we thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, rating, I'd probably give it like on a grade scale, probably like a C, and like on a number scale out of 10, probably like a 6, maybe. Again, like, I'm gonna get into it heavily, but this doesn't feel like a movie, for lack of a better term. Like, this doesn't feel like a completed movie. Like, and again, this is going back to, the Thor Love and Thunder piece of it. Like, these movies don't feel like movies anymore. Like, they feel like, even say what you will about, that 2014 to 2019 piece of Marvel, like, whatever projects you didn't like, at least they felt like movies, like, that had parts of, like, there's no, like, you're going to talk about the music moment in this. Like, I struggle to find one. I have one music moment in here, and I feel like we might have the same one, but, like, that's difficult for me that there's no music moment. Like, you look at Michael Giacchino and, like, what he does with Marvel and, like, what he does at all, it's still a travesty that he didn't get nominated for the Batman for Best Original Score, but, like, I can find pieces from Doctor Strange or No Way Home, like, of his score. You look at, you think about cinematography, you think about that lens. Like, I don't know who shot this movie. Like, I know they used the soundstage, and I'm going to get into that, but there's no shot from this movie that I can think of. Like,
mine, I think, is right at the beginning, to be honest with you. But, yeah, I think, I think I'm floating probably right around the same, kind of rating as you are, probably like a 6.5. I think the worst of these Marvel movies, the problems with them are the villains. And I think this movie is bolstered so powerfully by such a great performance and such a concrete villain that it's able to cross that bar for me as far as like the lower tier.
Yeah. So it's funny that same argument that you're using is what makes this movie even worse for me, because he doesn't like, Jonathan Majors doesn't belong here.
Well, this was the problem. This was the fear that we both had when we were talking about this movie last week. Like, how do you make this conflict work between Kang and Ant-Man? And I mean, the verdict ultimately is it really doesn't.
No.
The conflict, like I said, we can full spoilers now. We'll talk about the spoilers now. Yeah. The core conflict is Kang and Janet.
Yeah.
That's where the conflict is. And that was my concern I talked about last week. Like, how are they going to manufacture to make Kang and Scott enemies?
Right.
And I mean, they do it, but they do it in the way that is like the typical, like, I have your daughter, like,
right,
do what I say.
And it's because Ant-Man's done 4 heists now.
Yeah. Because
Ant-Man and the Wasp, technically, he does a heist for the building itself. The one is built upon that's a heist movie. And then they do the time heist. Like, this is the weakest heist. Like, it's just written just to be in, like, it's so...
The heist happens super quickly.
Yeah, it's very... Also. It's so artificial. Like, it's so... Because you look at the trilogies and, like, what... Even as much as, we don't particularly love Iron Man 3, like, Iron Man 3 still represents, like, the idea of Iron... Like, it's not Iron Man, it's Iron Man. Like, it's the man piece of it. Like, the Tony Stark piece of it was important. You look at Captain America. Captain America's always been, like, this moral debate between, like, is he a good man, or, like, is he hit something that's super important? And it's just, like, it's also him being the leader of something, and that foundation is now broken. Like, he's supposed to be the symbol for hope for the future, and, like, he was for the Avengers, and now it's gone. Like, you look at Thor for his third one, like, he needed to go through, like, the hammer's just a conduit, like, you're the true power. Like, I don't feel that anything of that with Scott in a third movie. Like, you look at even The Dark Knight Rises, like, that's the conception of, like, this idea of, like, the Bat vigilante in Gotham. Like, is that going to really save you guys, or is, like, this concrete League of Shadows is going to save you? Like,
it's weird that Avengers Endgame did that for Scott more than this movie did.
That's the same way I feel about Thor as well. Like Thor got everything he needed in Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame.
Like Scott, to their credit, is super capable in this movie.
Is. Yep, even way more than he is.
He's smart. He comes up with some brilliant tactics.
They Barry Allen Flash TV show him and like retroactively make you remember that he's also like has an engineering degree and he's not an idiot. Like he
comes up with some real neat tactical maneuvers as it relates to his obviously not the final fight between him and Kang, but like leading up to that final fight, he's coming up with strategies and plans. He's really orchestrating this whole kind of assault on Kang's citadel. It's really all Scott's kind of planning, it was super cool. He just unabashedly spams that giant man button, which I mean, if you got it, use it.
Yeah. Bill Foster, eat your heart out. That's the real giant man now.
Yeah, he's it was cool. It was cool to see that like there's levels to this, and Scott is clearly at that level. Like you wouldn't find me hard pressed to argue why Scott's an Avenger. Like he is the best at what he does. Even if what he does is a very niche thing, he's the best at it. Whereas like in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second film, Hope is so far and away better than him at Ant-Manning. Whereas in this, you're like, they're either equals or Scott's kind of surpassed her at this point with using the tech. And
unfortunately, I think that's the demise. That's another piece of the demise of Hope's character too, is that she hasn't moved. Like the needle hasn't moved for her. She's so in service of her that she's not a character anymore.
Right. Yeah. And so I mean that was cool. Like that Scott really was capable in this movie. Like in a weird way, like our worries were like, how could he match up to Kang? And then like you watch it and you're like, I kind of get it. like he's weirdly capable. Like
which is
he's
great for him, but that's not good for the guy that you're trying to put the shoulders of this whole multiverse saga on. And I mean, we talked about it last week. I think we're starting to jump to some conclusions, and one of those conclusions is what was phase 1 to 3. The Infinity Saga was how many? It was 11 years. This saga is, because this is probably going to finish in 2027 because delays. Is going to be 6 years, around 6+ years. And then I just think they're trying to wait to get to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, because that's your outside of the Avengers, like those are your money. Those are your headline movie box office money grabbers.
I will say though, there was one line in this that made me kind of readjust my thinking on Kang. And it was one that he said, that didn't really strike me as much the first time as it did the second time, when he says, I don't live my life in a straight line. And I'm like, that's interesting, because yes, he is super powerful in this movie. Like he does some just comical things to people, but at the same time, this is not the strongest version of him.
I mean, I can get into the theory.
We can, let's talk about it.
That's He Who Remains.
Yeah.
And that's where he got transported to at the end of this movie?
Because when I think it was because I knew how the movie ended, right? Like going into it the second time, like where he ends up. And him saying like, I don't live my life in a straight line. I'm like, this isn't the most powerful version of him. Like it does stand to reason that he can be kind of upended by Scott, especially because the reason he's upended is because he gets super emotional, and part of me thinks like down the line, like that wouldn't happen. Like he wouldn't get super emotional when his plans go awry. He would just end it. You know what I mean? It almost feels like he was kind of talking above his skis a little bit. Like he has seen so much that he kind of got complacent.
Down to his downfall. Like it's just like, he's just like, I know what's going to happen, so I'm good. Like his own hubris kind of killed him.
Yeah. I don't know. That just struck me like the second time around. Like I said, I think it's because I knew how it ended, and like going in, I didn't expect him to lose kind of as definitively as he ends up losing. But knowing that the second time around, like the way he speaks, I'm like, man, this really isn't like as powerful as he's making himself out to be. It's not as strong as he's going to be. And I think he kind of also knows that.
Sure.
So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things at play.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting theory. That's interesting.
Like the second time around, like just made me think. But yeah, going back to what we were talking about, like at the end of the movie, we're in spoilers now. He gets kind of compressed into his little core sphere thing, and then that explodes in some form, but it doesn't explode in the same crystallized, magnanimous explosion as when Janet did it. It's more compressed, and he's just gone. So I'm like,
yeah, there's one A or one, or it's one or two. Option one is that's He Who Remains, and that's where he went. Like he went, like it's my theory that I think I told you after we saw it for the first time is like that Kang got transported to like the first second from like, you know how like Galactus came from the last universe to this universe, like he got transported to that second where like the universe was incepted, and like he has to live, like he doesn't age, so he has to live up until the last moment. So he's found out how to amass power, all these things. So he's gotten up to that and like to where He Who Remains is like he's seen everything. Like he's gotten, that's who that Kang the Conqueror is. He Who Remains.
Yeah, he's seen everything.
Yep.
And he's done what this Kang set out to do, which
and the post-credit scene backs that up even more, because they're like very bent on like, we need the multiverse, but like, what does He Who Remains and Kang have in common? Like, no like.
And what does he say to Janet also?
Yeah, like
when she goes, you know, which worlds are gonna die? Not yours.
Not yours. Yep, the main 616. Like you're good. This is where Scott Lang lives. I can't kill this timeline. So yeah, I think that Kang is that's actually He Who Remains. It wasn't a variant of himself. Like, because what does he say in Loki as well? Like, they called me a lot. Like, they called me a conqueror. Like, I am Kang myself.
And based on, you know, kind of how humiliating his defeat is, it also makes sense that He Who Remains is a little cracked by the time Loki and Sylvie get there. Like, this guy got beaten by Ant-Man, got compressed, sent through time. Like, he's kind of like just...
Yeah, and it even backs it up, like, the time's not linear for him. So, like, he's Dr. Manhattan, essentially. Oh, man. And one day we're going to talk about that Watchmen TV show.
Like, he kind of just, you know, even when he's showing Janet the timeline, right? He shows her that circular timeline.
Not a line, or not a branching line. So it's like, it's not so, like, I can pick and choose. Like, I'm living all this at once right now. Like, it's not going to feel right to you, but he's just like, when you've seen as much as I've seen, like... And
they had that conversation. Man, it's kind of wild that I'm kind of, like, piecing this all together now. Like, him and Janet do have that conversation where she's like, well, what do you do? What do you do? And he goes, I win.
Yeah, I win.
And what does He Who Remains say that he did?
Yeah.
He won.
He won, yep.
Because he ended the multiversal war.
Yeah.
Which is
what Kang wants to do. Yeah, he said yeah. So I think that's pretty locked into I think that Kang and He Who Remains are the same person. And like, it's funny that like Kang or He Who Remains just turned into like a senile old man versus Kang is like, but again, time's not for him. It doesn't work. I just want to know what's the inception of him being broken from a linear path into the circular path. Like, I want to know what happened to him. So I got some reading to do. I was digging into the recent Kang run that came out last year. I was digging into that a little bit because it's incredible to start. I've like 2 issues in, and it's awesome. So I've been digging into that. I made sure my local comic book shop, there's a whole bunch of long boxes back there. I got Avengers 246, which is the Kang Lives part of that Avengers arc, which is awesome. So stockpiling a little bit, but I'm deep diving a little bit, seeing what I can pick and choose out of it. But I think that's the strongest theory, is that He Who Remains and Kang are the same person. So like, they want no multiverse. Like, they can't have, because he talks about it too. Like, they're children. They don't understand what they're playing with. Like, the Infinity Stones are like, and I mean, what does Loki do right out of the gate in that show?
The Infinity Stones.
They're not anything compared to the idea of time itself. Like, I can just make it that the Infinity Stones weren't needed as a building block for the universe.
He says that to Janet too. Yeah. Like, I can bring you back to the moment you left your daughter. Like, I can do that. Like, and that's kind of one of the pitfalls of this movie. Like, he speaks of all these grand things he can do and doesn't do any of them.
And I mean, that's also that's also the fault of the structure of this of not only the movie but the universe you're trying to build in the multiverse saga. Like, it doesn't make it. Stop telling me. Just show me. A friend of mine made a really good point. Like, we heard him talk it like. We couldn't have one cut to him just obliterating, like, a version of I don't care what version of they're Avengers. Like, whatever timeline you go to, that name should carry some gravitas. So, like, you can't show me one piece of him just destroying the Avengers in this movie for a second. Yeah. You can't get a cameo from, like, 4 or 5 of them for just a second of just, like, what they did in Age of Ultron, like, with that little vision. Like, you can't do a second of that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the super unfortunate thing is there's so many interesting ideas at play as it relates to this character, and it's kind of a pit. It's a detriment to the movie that we're not really talking about the rest of the movie because there isn't much of one.
No, and it's my No Way Home first half argument that it doesn't feel like an actual film. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a movie. Like, the ideas of what movies are, it doesn't feel that in the first half. Like, the movie starts with that Janet scene where he finds her and he's just like,
which is also like, I think I will say now that's one of my favorite shots of the movie is the wide shot of her walking like in the quantum realm. It's this movie, it doesn't look great, but it could have looked worse.
Yeah, it could have looked worse, but like even going to that point of like, why does it look so cheap? Like, why are these,
like, for this movie taking place entirely in the quantum realm essentially, I thought it looked okay.
I also think back to Doctor Strange. Like, Doctor Strange, in the middle of where they were pumping out some of the biggest budgets you can ask for in Hollywood. I mean, one of the movies does have the biggest budget in Hollywood ever. Yeah. Like, why does that movie in 2016 look leaps and bounds better than this movie?
Well, it goes back to the compression.
4 movies, 4 shows in a year might do that to you. And not making the return on investment at the box office, and, the subscribers canceling their subscriptions after. And it's just, you see The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian uses the soundstage, and then you see this movie, and it's just, you need to know how to use the soundstage. I was actually just watching The Batman last night, and, like, those rooftop sequences use the sound, but, like, they know, like, Matt Reeves knows how to use the sound spatially. Like, that scene is one of, like, the best shots, I think, of 2021, of where Catwoman and him are on the roof and she, like, walks away at the sunset. Like, that's the soundstage behind them, but, like, I'm in Gotham. Like, I don't feel... the Quantum Realm's not a real place, but, like, at least in Doctor Strange, like, you feel like you're going on this journey. It just feels like there's people in a room. Like, that just has a whole bunch of green around them. That's it.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I totally agree.
It sucks and it's sad that we have to go through this. And it's like, and then I look at like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and I'm like, this show's actually shot well, but people don't talk about it enough. That like there is time spent. Like, not all these Phase 4 projects suffer from the same things, but
I mean, this is honestly becoming kind of an issue. Also, even Wakanda Forever has this problem. I'm getting a little tired of faction on faction battles at the end of these movies.
Yeah, yep.
Which we get here with the quantum people.
It takes the
versus Kang's army.
It takes the personal stakes out of the end fight. Like,
I think Wakanda Forever probably does it the best.
Oh yeah, out
of all of these.
And just because you care about
and they do a good job of setting up like Okoye and Atuma and Ironheart and Namora. And then, obviously, Shuri and Namor.
But then that Shuri and Namor fight gets elevated because they get separated from all that. Yeah. Like, they are, like, away, like, just fighting. Like, and now it's a fight for a nation. And, like, I just think about the end of Civil War, how potent that last fight was. And it's just 3 of them. It's not the whole of it. Like, that movie could have ended with the airport scene, but what makes more sense? Like, an actual personal fight between the 2 of them.
And it's more important also, like, just thinking about the movies, even in Phase 4, that kind of ended with kind of either one-on-one or one-on-one adjacent fights. Like Spider-Man versus Green Goblin is incredibly potent.
Yeah, they're just fighting.
Even Strange in America versus Wanda is pretty potent. Like when America knocks Wanda through that portal and she has to come to kind of face to face with herself. That's incredibly meaningful. As if it was, instead of it was just like, I don't know, like Doctor Strange and a bunch of ghosts against like an army of Wondergore. You know what I mean? Like that wouldn't feel as like important.
Right.
And like I said, as far as like the faction on faction battles, I think Wakanda Forever does it the best.
Yeah.
And I mean, this one does it.
It's just Kang's faceless stormtroopers against makeshift Star Wars characters
that we're supposed to care about, but
we don't
really.
No. Not enough time with it. This movie's 2 hours. This movie should have been, of any of the movies that should have been longer, this one should have been like hard stop paid reaches. Oh, this movie needs to be 2:30. Like this, there's so much stuff in here. Like, I don't know how you even get fluff in a 2 hour movie, but
we haven't talked about MODOK yet either.
Oh yeah, we haven't. That's a solid chunk of this movie.
Corey Stoll's back.
Yeah, so the reveal is that Corey Stoll...
The worst kept secret in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. But Corey Stoll is Darren Cross. What happened was, like, his arms got compressed. Like, you thought he died at the end of Ant-Man 1, but he just got compressed into himself, and now he's, like, a mangled version of himself, and now he's a mechanized organism designed only for killing.
I thought this was fine.
I mean, me too. I didn't think this is nearly... It's one of those things where, like, the concept is bad.
Not my favorite character, MODOK.
Don't get me started, man. That these people are just faking anger for things that
I thought of everything in this movie, like, that you could deem, like, egregious. This was the least egregious. I thought he was fine. I thought he was perfectly fine.
Yeah, like, I don't know what people want MODOK to be.
He was fairly menacing, also.
Especially when he, like, came on screen. Like, he just, like, crap, like, this guy...
He's, like, vaporizing people?
Yeah, like, he just... like, cool. Like, MODOK's not some, like, cool villain. Like, he's a floating head in a chair.
But you and I both agree that this should have taken the Guardians mold and made MODOK the villain and made Kang, like, the puppeteer.
Well, apparently that was what was supposed to happen. This movie was supposed to be... It was supposed to be MODOK, and MODOK was supposed to reform... Like, what I think would have been cool is if MODOK would have... If in Ant-Man 1, like, Darren Cross would have been like, all right, Hank, I'm done with Pymtech. I'm gonna take what... what's his name in Iron Man 3?
Aldrich Killian?
I'm gonna take Aldrich Killian's idea, and I'm gonna reform AIM for myself, and then he dies or quote-unquote dies at the end, and then he reforms AIM again.
Also, if you make a Darren Cross MODOK the villain of Ant-Man 3, it's perfect Ant-Man storytelling.
Yeah,
to bring Yellow Jacket back as something other, and have him fight Scott again is perfectly acceptable for a trilogy.
And now that's Scott's arch nemesis. Like, Scott doesn't have an arch nemesis right now.
No, because he clears them all. Because he's the best.
Never lost.
Never lost. He clears all his antagonists. Scott got no time for recurring antagonists.
No, he doesn't.
Because they're all dealt with.
Yeah. Hilarious narrative that you've built.
No, but I think he's fine. I think Darren Cross is fine. Like, I think out of all, like, the comedy moments, I think his land also the best.
He is, but his death scene is also hilarious. He becomes heroic in the end.
Yeah.
He's an honorary Avenger. And who's gonna say no besides the top Avenger?
Right. I was perfectly fine with MODOK. And he's also, I do enjoy, like, the very clear pecking order between Kang and MODOK. Like, MODOK really isn't much different than the faithless Stormtrooper guys to Kang. Like, you don't speak while I'm in the room.
Yeah.
Woof. Boy, oh boy.
And I mean, Jonathan, again, playing that, like, I love how it's like he personifies, like, he just lifts a finger to do whatever he wants.
He has so much gravitas.
And it's like, this is how I thought about it too. I keep thinking about Iron Man, and like, that's what Kang is, but he's just the most futuristic version of Iron Man that his suit, because what does Janet say? Like, okay, I stopped the time shift, but he got his suit, and that was enough to build an absolute empire in here. Like, the only thing they don't play into is the genius part. Like, he should be like, I mean, I think it's this, like, Reed is supposed to be like, even you throw him in any century.
The smartest man alive, you say.
Got packed up like
not the man who got turned into pasta.
Yeah, tough day at the office for him. I still can't believe Wanda said that to him. Good. There'll be someone left to... Whoa.
Uh-oh.
What's she cooking?
Pasta.
Yeah.
Pasta and meatballs. Ask Black Bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else about this movie? Ants?
Ants. So Hank Pym is the ant god now. He's basically Khonshu, but ants.
The ant god.
Yeah, I mean, look, to counter my point about how much, like, I don't love Hank Pym's character in the MCU, like, he's the ant god now. Like, the guy... Oh, you want to talk about the funniest exposition dump in the entirety of the MCU? I don't care what anybody says, it's the funniest one we've ever gotten.
Yeah, it's, so there's this whole through line.
Well, the inciting incident is getting thrown into the quantum realm.
You don't realize that this is a through line until my man Hank Pym ties it all together at the end of this movie. Yep. But in the beginning, him and Cassie, I guess mostly him, have built this ant farm where the ants have built it themselves. Like, the ants are becoming intelligent.
Yeah.
Great. Because Hank Pym just can't mind his business. Mm-hmm. He's always got to be screwing around.
They're self-sustaining now.
They really are.
Yep.
So they all get sucked into the quantum realm, ants and all, everyone, including the ants.
Yeah, but the ants take like a different path.
Ants take a detour.
Yeah.
And all throughout the movie, Hank just kind of like keeps going to his earpiece.
Keeps hearing something.
He's like, "What is that? What is that?" And you don't think anything of it, because why would you?
Because the movie's not good enough about setting stuff up.
But this is the best thing that they set up?
It's the funniest thing. But it's also the most important thing.
So MODOK takes Hank down in his spaceship, leaves him for dead.
Oh, I love that running gag throughout the movie. Darren?
It's
He's like launching into his villain monologue, and they're all like, "Holy crap!"
It's so natural.
Oh yeah,
like it's such a natural response.
Right? They're like, "You should be dead." A and B. Why are you a gigantic head with baby limbs?
He's like, "I don't have tiny legs." I love when Scott goes, "Oh, I'm mechanized organism."
He's literally like in his main villain like origin story thing, and Scott's like, "Oh, MODOK, it's an acronym." Paul Rudd, everybody.
I love how he goes, "It's an acronym," and then he yells across to Cassie, "It's an acronym."
It's an acronym. And Cassie's just like, "Oh yeah, makes sense."
It's pretty good.
And then Kang walks in and the tone shifts completely. Yeah. That's another issue.
Yeah, totally. This movie's all over the place. But yeah, MODOK takes Hank down, and then there's a silhouette of a giant ant. Mm-hmm. And then Hank's, they're like, "Hank, you're alive. Thank God." And he's like, "Holy cannoli, are those your ants?"
Yeah.
And Hank's like, "Yes.
Yes.
Let me tell you why." And he goes,
I just thought of a new category for us for when we talk about this. Best exposition dump.
It's Janet Van Dyne. Not best, but it's certainly the longest.
I'm arguing it's this one.
This one's pretty good.
It's just the ludicrous nature of this one. That's why I love it so much.
Insanity.
I'm adding that. That's the best category we've ever got.
So Hank goes, so the ants got sent through the quantum realm, and you wouldn't believe this, but they got sent through a time warp where they lived 1,000 years in like 10 minutes, and they built their own technology that we can't even begin to fathom.
Yep.
They're hyper intelligent now.
What do you say? They're a class 2 techno civilization. Man,
they got lasers.
They got laser beams. They could grow themselves. I guess they made Pym-Tech themselves. Man.
And then they tank down Kang.
They take down Kang the Conqueror, the guy that this whole phase is, or the whole saga is supposed to shoulder me down. The ants take him down. John, you deserve better than this, man.
Also, like, one of my favorite musical moments, Hank Pym standing just heroically while the ants are marching behind him.
What were those little zooms that they were doing? Like, what kind of early 2000 zooms were they doing on some of the characters in some scenes?
I don't know. There was that weird bit with Bill Murray's character where they do that weird cut to that one alien.
Just for nothing.
Just for no reason. Why was Bill Murray in this movie?
He did not need to be in this movie at all. The movie does not... You can cut the entire scene out and the movie's the exact same.
They just went to a quantum realm cantina.
And like, he was in the movie for 5 minutes.
5-10 minutes, yeah.
That's it.
You know what would have saved that movie? Or that scene? If they got in there and it would have been like... Like if it was just the Star Wars cantina, but in the quantum realm.
And they can use it because it's Disney.
Yeah.
Just don't say anything.
And that would have been great.
Oh, you know what would have been even better? They walked in and like Bill Murray's character's there, and then all you hear is, "I can bring him in warm or I can bring him in cold."
Yeah, that bit did not need to be in this movie at all.
Just to say Janet's sexual history, I guess.
And to get Bill Murray in an MCU movie?
Oh, that was probably... I mean, that's more than likely it.
That also raised the price tag.
Right, because I guarantee you Bill Murray's like $5 million. For 10 minutes, and he's like, I'm Bill Murray. I'm Bill Murray from every Wes Anderson movie. You better put me in here.
I'm Bill Murray from Space Jam.
Yeah, put me in here. I'm better than Michael Jordan, actually.
They just needed to say, hey, we're Marvel, and we got Bill Murray, Michael Douglas, and Michelle Pfeiffer in the film.
Same movie. God.
What else about this movie?
I mean, I guess we can launch into the categories. I mean, just narratively, so we start the movie with, like we said, with Kang and Janet in the quantum realm. Janet's settled. Kang appears, and he's just like, what is this place? She saves him. He saves her. What is this place? And then we jump to Scott living it up in San Francisco at a book reading. He's having a grand time.
He's like, what is my life?
What is my life? Like, I'm loving it. I helped Captain America. I'm an Avenger. I'm him. I'm that guy.
He is him.
He is him. Yeah. And then Cassie calls from jail. He's like, why is jail calling
Why is jail calling? Paul Rudd is so good, man.
He's good in anything he does. Why is jail calling me? Picks up Cassie. Cassie's, you're Catherine Newton. You're not my daughter from the other movies. And you're not my other daughter from the other movie. You're Catherine Newton. You're famous actress Catherine Newton.
You're Catherine Newton from The Society.
Yeah. Oh, you're different. But okay. Multiverse, I guess.
She's been Aunt Manning.
Yeah, she's been Aunt... Has she? Or has she just been freedom fighting?
Well, she said she had a suit.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, and she shrunk that police car. So I guess she has been Aunt Manning a little bit. So they go back to the house. She calls Hank Grandpa Hank.
Fun.
Nice. Endearing. And then...
Hope's like, Mom, why don't you ever talk about the quantum realm?
So she's still... And I think you made a great point that she's very war veteran-esque.
It's so cool.
That Janet's just like, we don't say his name. Tell Kang...
And then Catherine Newton's like, hey, I know you don't want to talk about the quantum realm, but
I built this.
Look what me and your husband built.
You, your husband, and your daughter built a deep space quantum
beacon.
We
can map the whole thing out.
Yeah,
it's great. And Janet's like, that is great. Actually, how'd you do that? She's like, well. Actually, what I do is I send a signal down to the quantum realm, and she's like, you what?
You what?
Lo and behold,
yep.
Sucked into the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Sucked in, idiots.
Yeah. So Cassie and Scott get separated
from... back in the quantum realm
back in the quantum realm for the 18th movie. They get separated, so it's the Van Dyne, it's the Pim Van Dynes, and then it's the...
And this is like this is why I love Janet so much. Like, as soon as she gets down there,
she's like, oh
she's wired in.
Yeah.
She's like pinning them against walls. She's like, shh. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Don't you follow me and you shut up.
Yep.
And Hank's like, what's going on, Janet? Yeah. And she's like, shut up.
Why'd you say that like 1960s Hank Pym? How I imagine that you would read it like in a 60s comic? Like that's exactly how you would say it? Very Fred Flintstone of
you. She's like, shut up.
We're not... Very the Jetsons of you.
And this is why, again, because my brain's wired differently than most people, I wish they just didn't tell us Jonathan Majors was in this. Because
it's so cool.
Because she's alluding this. Everyone through like the first half of this is alluding to this him. He's looking for you. He's this. He's that. And you like. There's no tension there because we all know who he is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what if it was like? I mean, I think that's why Loki plays so well because he just shows up and he's like. And he's the most powerful being we'd ever seen in any of these movies shows up until that point.
Yeah, that's why Loki's so good.
Yeah.
And they had the opportunity to do the same exact thing, but Marvel can't help themselves.
Yeah.
Like, Kang the Conqueror is going to be in this Ant-Man movie. Just save it.
Because you're trying to capture what you did with Thanos, but then Thanos was sprinkled, and then when he came in, he's holding the two, and they had the debate, like, oh, what if Hulk and Thor were here for Civil War? It wouldn't be a Civil War, would it? It'd be over. And then then they got to Infinity War, and your two most powerful characters are being dragged on the screen.
Just show us MODOK.
And then the guy gets beat by Ant-Man.
Yeah. Just show us MODOK the whole time. Show us MODOK.
It would have been a cool bait and switch if the whole time it's just like he's coming and then it's like MODOK and you're like, Darren? And then like Darren's like menacing, and like Darren's doing all these things, and like he's the repackaged villain. And then Darren's like, I had a boss this whole time. And then it's Jonathan Majors again. And then Moon Knight season 2 should do the same thing.
Yeah. That would have been great.
Just keep...
But instead, all the tension sucked out of the room because we know the ominous he is obviously Kang the Conqueror. Mm-hmm. We know. We all know. You can just tell us that it's him. So Janet and Co. meet with Bill Murray, and she's like, he's my old friend when I was a terrorist. And Hank's like, you what?
Yeah. You're still hot, baby. He literally says that. He doesn't say she's hot, but he does say baby.
It's such a bizarre...
relationship.
Everything about it is bizarre. Lo and behold, Bill Murray double-crosses them. He's like, you were gone for a long time, and Kang just took everything over, and I work for him, and it's great. Mm-hmm. They escape. Meanwhile, Scott and Cassie are with the
freedom fighters. The
freedom fighters and the displaced people. Kang has displaced them. Very sad.
I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Cassie's like, we should help them. And Scott's like, nope, not our problem. We need to get out of here. We need to go find Janet.
I need to keep you safe.
Keep you safe, and we need to find Janet. And they're like, Janet?
God.
They're like, well, if you're here for Janet, then he's looking for you. He who remains. Dang it.
And then he does look for them, but he sends out his killer. MODOK. It's Darren Cross.
It's great. Darren? It's great.
Darren I pull that joke 4 times, and I personally think it's funny every time.
It's pretty good, yeah. He does the Anakin Skywalker from the Obi-Wan show. Darren is gone. MODOK is all that remains. I'm sorry, Darren. I have failed you, Darren.
Yeah,
I have failed you.
Oh, and then they pull a brother's bit at the end. You were my brother. You were my brother, Paul. Or Scott.
Paul.
That would have been even better.
I do love that bit, though, when he's like, I view you like a brother, Scott. And he's like, huh?
It's like, I love that, like, it's retroactively, like, Darren trying to make himself the main character, even though everybody forgot about him. Yes. It's so much. Your old protege, Hank, like, everybody's like, that was like 8 years ago, man. We all forgot about you.
Finally. He does the Darth Vader, like...
He even does, like, the cackling laugh. He should have been the main villain to just chew the scenery for the whole movie. They should have done him and AIM, and then AIM should have got out.
He does the Darth Vader, like, when I left you, I was but the loader. Now I am the master. Mm-hmm. And Hank's just like, huh?
Dare.
He's like, what the hell? And I love, like, I forgot... This is where Evangeline Lilly being forgotten about actually helps. Mm-hmm. Because then she shows up, and you realize that she hasn't seen him yet. Yeah. And she's like, Darren?
Yeah, and he's just like, oh, you cut your hair.
And she's like, I did.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they send MODOK after Scott and Cassie. They get captured. Janet and Hank escape, where Janet's like, I'm going to leap into a 35-minute exposition about how me and Kang the Conqueror fixed his time ship.
Why it doesn't work is because they hold it so close to the chest. But again, to your point, we know. We already know. There's no huge reveal that you're about to tell us. Like, we know.
We know he's Kang the Conqueror.
There's no surprise. There's nothing groundbreaking.
You may not have known Janet, but we knew.
Yeah. Anybody with a functioning brain cell in universe could have figured it out.
There was some interesting bits about like his time chair's neurokinetic.
Like that's cool. Like cool comic call. Like he's got the time chair. He's got a suit, and like again, the way Jonathan Majors acts is just like he's very like you want to trust this guy. Like
and he's also very manipulative.
He is very he's gaslighting her essentially. He's just like you don't want to see you can see your daughter if you want.
He pulls the same stuff with Scott to like. You know, you care about your daughter, don't you? Like, you're gonna help me.
Yeah. And again, it just shows, like, his villainous nature. He's just like, I love how he toys with Scott and Cassie, where he had, like, do I look like a man that likes repeating do I look like a man that, like, he doesn't play this villain hero, like, back and, like, there's none of that. He's like, And
it's also great later on when Scott's like, you promised to leave Cassie alone. He's like, she'll be fine without you.
Yeah,
like,
you're good.
You served your purpose. Like, I'll leave her alone, but I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
He's very menacing.
Yeah, so big exposition dump. You find out that the time chair is neurokinetic, so she touches the core, and then she realizes that that's not Nathaniel Richards. Like, that's not only Nathaniel Richards, that's Kang the Conqueror. So she feels him destroying timelines themselves, starting a war to, end the war, essentially. all these, horrific, horrible, terrible things, and she's just like, uh-oh, I should probably get out of here. And he's just like, Janet, just stop before you do anything stupid. Come on, let's go. Let's leave. And
I do, to make the Thanos comparison, this is, a good kind of leveraging between he and Thanos. So, like, they both think they're the heroes of their own story. Like, he even says to Scott, like, be careful, like, with Janet, like, she's liable to change her mind, like, at any point. Like, he feels betrayed. Like, he felt like Janet betrayed him, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. I mean, I would have rather much that happen in Kang Dynasty than in an Ant-Man movie, but...
Who am I to judge?
Me.
Yeah, so...
Gigantic exposition dump. More freedom fighting. All right, they're in the prison. And then we see Kang proper. Roll up. Swagged out. Brand new suit. Freshly buffed. Oh, man. The roll up is crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, so he does not play any games. Like, I mean, he's just like, all right, Scott, like, are you going to help me? Like, you're good. Okay, so you're going to help me? Or this is just a when type of thing. This isn't an if. Or I kill her, or you, like, what? How do we want to do this? Like, who am I going to kill?
Well, he says, I'm going to kill her, and I'm going to make you relive that moment over
and over again. And he's just like, uh-oh. And then Scott's like, we can talk about this. And he immediately starts to, like, attempt to, like, compress his bones down. Like, he's like, oh, I'm not doing this. When you lived as long as me, we're not doing this. We're not having this back and forth. Like, you're going to do it, and that's it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the way that he plays it. It's just
and
like,
then he does it.
Yeah, and then he's like, okay, like, and then he's just like, he's doing it, he's torturing Scott, and then Scott's like, all right, let's talk. He's like, you're not listening, like, you're hearing me, but you're not listening to me, so I'm going to kill her now, and we can talk. Like, we're not going to talk. You're just going to do this for me. He's like, okay, fine, I got you. The heist time.
Yeah, and it's kind of over and done with. Like, mission accomplished.
So you find out Janet, she exploded the core with the pin particles, so now it's like, it's massive. So Scott needs to kind of, shrink himself down to go back in to get the core itself back out and, like, shrink the core back down. So they get in there, and then it's the cool thing of the movie, I guess, but it's not that cool. And it's the... What do they call it? A probability storm?
Matrix? Yeah, it's like a probability matrix. It erupts.
So he gets down there, and Darren's like, this is all... No, Darren? MODOK? What?
Great. Yeah. MODOK is great in this. I don't care.
I think he's one of the better parts of this movie, to be honest. It's like what Cassie said in the first movie, like, he's so ugly, I love him. Like, he's just an idiot. Like, he's just a bumbling, fun, stupid thing.
Yeah.
That I can enjoy. But he gets down there, he's just like, that was just the beginning. Like, getting in there was only the beginning. Like, now you're going to start to see different possibilities of yourself. We see a whole bunch of Ant-Man, and they keep spawning, and then we see dying, yep. And then they turn into ants, essentially, so they, like, all have one common goal. We gotta help Cassie. Shut up, movie. So they all get the common goal. Everybody, even the Baskin-Robbins version of himself helps him out get up there.
He's like, how did I get here?
And then Evangeline Lilly's still in this movie, so she comes to Ex Machina real quick, lifts him up.
But she does twice in this movie?
Yeah, she does twice. That's all she's there for. She's there for Ex Machinas and awkward interactions with her parents. That's it. So they get up there, they get the core, they decompress it, and then Kang just shows up and he's just like, I'm not playing any games. We're not going to do this. So just telekinesis the core over to himself, and he's just like, all right, we're good. And then they attempt to fight, and immediately it's like, there's no fighting this guy. Like, we don't have a fight. Like, I don't care how many Avengers team-ups that you've been in. Like, there's no fight with me. Like, you're just gonna get thrown around. Like, we could do this all day if I could do this all day, says Kang.
Yeah.
So
until Hank Pym shows up.
Until the ants show up.
Because Hank Pym said, I got a plan.
Yeah, I got a plan. Me and the ants have a plan. How? I don't know. Who's to say? But they're thousands of years old.
Yep. And then, we do a revolution.
We do a revolution. Cassie does her best Andor impression.
Kang's getting ready to escape.
Yep. He's gonna bring his empire with him. And you're like, oh no, this is the part from the trailer where it says Kang Dynasty's coming. You're like, oh shoot.
He does say Kang Dynasty.
Yeah, he does. And then he gets cut off by Cassie.
Great.
Yeah. And then she does the Andor episode, whatever it was.
Foments a revolution.
Yep.
And then we get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, third act. So there's a plan. Best exposition. Well, we don't get the exposition dump yet. Yeah, we do.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Hank didn't show up yet.
Yeah, Hank didn't show up yet. So We are...
Kang sees Scott running towards the Citadel.
I do like that little bit with Janet and Kang, where it's just like, you never told me what you saw. Like, you like, it's been years.
It's also one of my favorite shots of him just sitting in the chair.
Oh my god, yeah.
Great shot.
He's got so much command. That's why I think it's great. So he's just like, you didn't tell me what you saw, and she's just like, I saw you, Melissa. He's just like, you guys don't understand. I'm trying. He Who Remains tried to say it. Like, I'm trying to tell. It's crazy that the post Loki and the post credit scene played fearing that man better than anybody else in the whole movie itself. Like, I'm trying to tell you guys that there's no win in this. So he's just like, all right, like, cool. Thanks for telling me what you saw. Like, that's true. Like, they played.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's me.
That's me. You're probably wondering how I got. My variants messed. They played with the timeline, and then we got that word again, that incursion word again. They started creating countless incursions, and the multiverse started dying. And like, I'm the only one that can prevent the multiverse from dying. So
they banished me.
They banished me for wanting to save everything. They called me a madman.
And then here comes Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Kang!
Oh my god, the dialogue's not good in this movie.
I'm very upset.
Kang, our word is our bond. God, what type of middle school dialogue is this?
Goes to that giant man well.
And then they keep cutting back to the freedom. I don't care. Well, I mean, the only reason that is because Cassie's like leading a revolution and she's doing the Robin.
And she's fighting MODOK.
Yeah. And then MODOK has a change of heart because of Cassie.
Kang's like, he pulls the Kylo Ren. Shoot that Ant-Man out of the sky.
Those that are red.
What's going on with Ant-Man when he's Giant Man? Is he bulletproof? What's going on?
Well, I don't know.
Because he's getting hit.
I was about to pull what Joel was doing in The Last of Us, where like he would try to explain something and then he just gave up. I don't know, man.
He's getting hit with heaps of lasers.
Like,
and he's just like, ah.
Yeah, that hurts.
Stop it.
I'm good though.
Stop it.
Yeah.
I thought for sure when he picked up that like disc shield that he was going to do a little Captain America bit.
Homage.
But he didn't.
Wasted potential. Peyton.
And I was a little bummed.
Yeah.
Because like Captain America's like his guy.
Yeah.
It's like, and he gets a shield. Like, man, guys,
as Giant Man.
Guys, come on, man.
Layup that you guys missed.
Him and Hope do a cool little kind of fastball special bit where he's like, throw me, and then she throws him, and then he gets real big, and he cannonballs through. Again, Scott, just great command of his powers. He explodes the whole thing again. Kang is just like,
So
So Kang's like, that's it. I'm dropping onto the battlefield myself. Fine, I'll do it myself. And then his
just starts going nuts,
vaporizing people.
Yeah,
his stormtroopers do the Okoye from Infinity War.
Yeah.
Why was he up there all this time?
And yeah, he's just clearing the room out. Like
he kills that weird laser beam man.
Like energy repurposed right back to the head and just
explodes him.
Yeah, crazy.
Why was he up there all this time?
Yeah. So, yeah, Kang's down there, and then Kang's just like, guys, just stop. Like, the revolution's over. Like, sorry, Korg, the revolution's done. Like, it was, again, I don't mean to keep going to the well, but, like, it was just seeing him do that, and, like, seeing, like, him clear out timelines, and then all I see is Ant-Man the Wasp and Stature pull up, and it's just like, this isn't a fair fight, right? Like, this isn't a battle, right?
Then we're throwing hands. He gets the upper hand on all of them. He's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, like, I'm Kang, destroyer of timelines, like, the kid, like, the Time King.
And you wanted to beat me with ants? And then Hank Pym's like...
I actually did.
Hank Pym's like, did someone say ants?
God. And then the greatest exposition dump in movie history
Hero shot of Hank Pym with
that little zoom pisses me off.
With his duster coat and his little like bandana.
Yep.
And here come the ants.
Yeah.
Ants.
Yep.
Ants.
The greatest trailer for a Marvel movie ever. It's better than the Infinity War trailer, actually. So yeah, Ant Ex Machina times a million. The 1,000-year-old godlike ants pull up. They defeat Kang. For the most part.
Well, MODOK helps.
Yeah, he helps get the final blow to take his shield down, and then the ants got him.
Yeah, they overwhelm him.
Yep.
The Last of Us zombie runner style, overwhelm him.
Yep.
And they're like, wow, that was easy.
Yeah. Thanks, Hank.
MODOK dies.
MODOK dies in one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie.
I'm an Avenger now.
And he's just like, Scott, I always thought, oh, how's it going?
Darren?
And then, yeah, he's just like, I always thought of us as brothers. And Scott's like, okay.
Yeah, they escape, where they're about to escape the quantum realm. They open up a portal. Janet's like, I got it figured out.
Yep.
And they all leave, and then Paul Rudd Scott sees something coming. He pushes Cassie through. It's Kang.
Yeah. Withered, suits torn off, and you realize that Jonathan Majors has been in the gym. You're like, oh shoot, this cannot end well physically for you.
Yeah. And
I love how I wish they would have played into how smart he is too, because there's something Reed Richards is not a fighter. You know what I mean? That's something that's cool. I would have loved to see him being that smart, and then this guy's just 240 pure.
I like this quite a bit. I like this switch up where he's had it.
Yeah,
he's so off his rocker.
I love how this movie doesn't deserve how good of a physical and emotional actor. The sprint he does is so primal to that portal. He's just every muscle in his body being used to run towards that portal,
and he's just so off tilt at this point. Everything that can go wrong has gone wrong, and he's just so angry.
Yeah.
And we only ever see him that angry one other time, and it's when Janet initially destroys the core in the beginning. And he's that angry again. His plan is decimated, and he's so frazzled and rattled by it.
Right.
Which makes me, again, goes back to my point, this is not the final form of this guy.
Yeah.
The final form of this guy does not get rattled by this.
No, so yeah, good side of the coin, this is just a fight, and again, I love how one-sided, it's funny, it even plays back to Ant-Man 1, him getting that cheap shot on Tiny in jail, he gets that cheap shot on Kang, but it's not a fair fight at all.
That kick to the chest, man. That initial kick to the chest.
He hits him with a two-piece to the stomach. I'm like, dude.
He stomps just the mask right off his face.
He's like I said, he's very primal in the way that he fights. It's survival of the fittest type of fighting that he's doing, and he plays it incredibly well. So he's just demolishing it. Scott's getting 1 to 2 blows to every 10 blows that Kang.
Every time Scott hits him, Kang's like, oh.
There was the one towards the end of the fight where he hits him and he starts smiling at. I'm like, buddy, you gotta go, man. Get out of there. But again, so the bad side, directing spatial awareness, you're not understanding. They keep moving, and then can Kang not just turn around and walk right towards the portal if he wanted to? You're not. I don't think you're understanding. But again, the only thing that I'll say to that is to your point about his anger. I think he got to the point where he's like, Doc, you need to, I'm gonna beat the living daylights out of you now because you've pissed me off. Now I'm actually kind of mad that you're doing this. You could have now, I love how short he is. He's just I told you could have seen your daughter again, but I guess not. We're gonna have to do it this way. We're gonna do it this way.
And then you get the line from the trailer where he's like, did you really think you can win? And then Scott says, I don't have to win. We just both have to lose. Which could have been a really great kind of ending.
Maybe if there was a button to press or something to have, but he just says the line.
Well, I mean, I guess it just speaks to Scott's mentality that he's prepared to die to keep Kang here.
But that doesn't. That's why they're not built for each other as adversaries, because that should have been Janet doing that, not Scott.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it should have been Janet that was the one that did that.
100%.
That's not Scott's line.
And she's shown that she's a capable combatant.
Because Scott's whole arc in this movie is get Cassie out of here. He doesn't even play into this whole Avengers, being an Avenger and looking out for the little guy. He doesn't play into that storyline that much. That's for Cassie to have. But then the movie jumps to a different point. They jump back with the Pim Van Dyne. So it's
yeah, really, this really should have been, again, this movie should have been Janet and Kang.
Can we just make a OG Wasp versus Kang movie? Dude.
They should, that should have been the fight at the end. It should have been Janet and Kang. But it's not. It's Scott and Kang, and they're fighting, and Kang kind of has him against the ropes, and then Scott, one pieces him, and then he's about to die, and then here she comes again.
Thanks, Hope. Yeah.
Again, to your point, this should have been Cassie. This should have been Cassie's moment to kind of either it should have been Cassie's moment to save Scott, or it should have been Janet's moment to sacrifice herself for Scott.
I don't know. Again, this whole we talked about it last week. We talked about some of the reviews about there being no stakes in this movie. This holds 3 movies with all of them, and none of them have died.
Yeah,
like not one of them. Like that's your perfect moment for either. It's got to be either Hank or Janet.
And narratively for this movie, Janet, it should have been Janet. Like she should have been the one to make the ultimate kind of sacrifice play and kind of, redeem herself in her eyes. We may not think she needs redemption, but she feels she needs redemption for what she did. And that would have been the perfect moment for that. But instead they just insert Hope to bail Scott out.
Because this movie's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, not Ant-Man QuantuMania.
Yeah, and then Kang gets, like we talked about, it gets compressed and exploded, and we don't know what happens to him. We have our theories, as we talked about, and then that's pretty much the movie.
Yeah, and then it jumps back to Scott and mirrors the beginning of the movie where he's walking around town. But then it does something I think is actually pretty cool, where he's like, uh-oh, like, we did kill him, right? Like... And he did say something like, even if you do, like, something far worse is going to come. And he's just like, we're good. We're fine. And that's Ant-Man QuantuMania. But then this movie, in my opinion, pulls what Black Adam did. And this movie only exists for the post-credit scene, in my opinion. And that post-credit scene is the Council of Kangs, is the first one. So there's 2. So for the mid-credit scene is Council of Kangs pulled right. Even though the last frame is pulled right from the comics. It's pretty cool. So you see Immortus. And you see Rama Tut. I don't know which other version of Kang that was there too, but you see the 3 of them, and they're just like, so the exiled one, he's dead. They says it to the other version of Kang, and he's just like, yeah, you killed, like, who killed? You're just mad you didn't kill him. And then Immortus walks out, and you're like, oh shoot, you're Immortus from Marvel Comics. And then you're just like, he's like, neither of us killed him. Like one of
Scarlet Centurion.
Oh, that is this. Wow, I didn't think they were. I had a feeling because, like, those are, like, it's like Victor Timely, but next post-credit scene. And then, I didn't know they were going to do that look for Scarlet Centurion, but alright, cool. So that makes it easier for, like, if you're just to pick something up. So you got Scarlet Centurion, Immortus, and Rama Tut, and they're just like, and Immortus walks out, and he's just like, it wasn't one of us, it was one of them. So I think he specifically was talking about the Avengers. I don't think he was talking about, like, just a normal person. I think he expressly meant the actual Avengers.
It was Scott Lang.
Like it was the most dangerous Avenger, Scott Lang, who's never. He's actually 62-0, and
we should be very worried.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he's like, the Avengers got us. Like, they're starting to touch the multiverse. So, like, I guarantee they probably felt the ramification. Like, they felt what happened in Multiverse of Madness. Like, they felt what happened in No Way Home. Like, they're starting to, like, be aware, not only be aware of it, but be able to, like, travel it. Like, they just probably don't want them to reach them. That's why they probably seclude themselves. So they're like, all right, we need a council meeting. I mean, like, we need a Kang council meeting immediately. Like, we got to figure this out. And they're probably like, all right, we're gonna insert ourselves into the probably into 616. Like, we're gonna start injecting
how many?
ourselves.
I think it's Scarlet Centurion says to the others, like, how many did you call?
Mm-hmm.
And he's all
of them. Yep. And you just see a whole bunch of Kangs using the same portals that his apparent, descendant used, Reed Richards. You see him using the same time portal.
And these guys are ready to rumble.
Yeah, they're ready to rumble. Like, you have the onlooker ones that are just losing it in the crowd. And then you have the ones that are just appearing out of, like, infinite versions of him. And I'll let you go off, because I think we feel the same way about this post-credit scene.
It's just wholly inaccessible to regular folk.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite of what these post-credit scenes were intended to do. When you look at the Nick Fury post-credit scene, when you look at the Thor's Hammer post-credit scene in Iron Man 2.
Even Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver from Winter Soldier.
Like, there's just enough there to, like, latch onto, where, like, you can establish some familiarity, but in this, like, it's so
it's very
cut.
Jarring, too. Like, it's, like, a lot, like, and...
Yeah, like, this guy's dressed like a pharaoh. This guy's
he's just like a pharaoh. He's just like an Iron Man from, like, the 51st century.
This other guy dressed as, like, some weird-looking Sun Tzu kind of looking character.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah. So it's a lot to take in, I think, and I think and that probably lends to why I think the second the
second post-credit scene is really
that's how
great.
you should attack it. Like the subtleties in which you attack it, I think is better. Like they went for the big bang, but like I don't think that's an earned big bang.
And it's weird that they did Kang twice in two post-credit scenes, whereas it feels like the second one it feels more ominous and more foreboding.
And because also you don't know that could be a good Kang. Like we don't know. That's definitely a possibility. Like we might be able to see like good versions
I would have
of
just
Kang.
scratched that whole first one and just led with the second one because as far as you know, the movie ended and he compressed and exploded.
Yep.
So like for the post-credit scene, like you hear his voice again.
Like, oh,
you're like,
shoot,
what is happening? And then you see him again, and he's not quite him.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Like that would have been so much better. And then he's speaking. It's Kang. He's talking about time.
Yeah,
and it's Victor Timely.
Yeah, it's Victor Timely, so that's a big pull. And then it's just he's in like this like
old timey
place.
sepia tone.
Yeah, almost like this 1920s like audience theater, and then pans back and it's Loki with like the oh shoot face like
with Mobius. Mobius is there.
Yeah, and it's just like Morbius is there.
Come on, man. Not now.
Loki's just like, I need a doctor, and then Michael Morbius is like, I am a doctor.
You're Tom Hiddleston from
a lot of stuff.
A lot of things.
Your character actor, Tom Hiddleston. So yeah, and then it's just, I love like Loki looks terrified, like absolutely mortified to see him, and then like Mobius is just like, bro, what's wrong? Like,
he's like, that's him?
That's
like,
him? He's just like,
He's like, you told me he was scary.
Yeah, he's just like, he is. Like, you don't get it. Like, he's got all the powers unlocked. He's got the manipulation of the timeline. It's the most precious power.
So this post-credit scene told me two things. One, Loki season 2 is now extremely important to the point where I think I told you I would not be surprised if they just dumped this all at once on Disney Plus and just made this appointment viewing. And then the second point is I think Jonathan Majors is going to be in that a lot more than I thought he was going to be. It feels like this Loki show season 2 is going to be very focused on Kang.
And I'll even go farther. I think Jonathan Majors is going to start showing up in a good amount of things. Like, I think he's just going to... What do we have coming forward? We have Thunderbolts, like, probably not, but, like, I can see... Because what do you have? What's the one... There's Victor Timely, like... I didn't think they were going to use Victor Timely. That makes it more interesting because I thought Victor Timely was going to be the one that bought Avengers Tower. I do think it's either going to be the Baxter Building is what's going to be of Avengers Tower, or they're going to do something different. But now you're going to start. I think he's just going to start popping up and stuff. Like, I think it would have been cool if they held that first post-credit scene, and then I'm going to talk about what I think they should have done, and then you kind of transition into, Rama Tut shows, like, what if they did what they did with Loki, but with Moon Knight season 2? And it's like, because what I think Moon Knight's arc's going to be is, like, he gets disconnected from Khonshu, so he needs to turn into, like, an actual vigilante.
Yeah.
And then, like, the end, like, why does this Pharaoh have, like, this unlimited power right now? Why does he have mechanical arms? It's what's going on? And then it's just like, oh, shoot, that's Rama Tut. So... I think that would have been. I think that's going to be the approach. Like, he's just going to start getting sprinkled into things, and he's just going to be different versions, like different performance, different version every time you see him.
Yeah, I can't stress enough. I think that Loki post-credit scene should have been it. Like, that should have been the only post-credit scene.
Because then it's like thought-provoking. Like, is he Kang? Is it He Who Remains? Is it another version? Is he bad? Could he possibly be good?
Whereas, like, that first one is so, like, whoa.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in. What that first one should have been, in my opinion, is... It's same concept, but two different routes. Route 1, it should have been Avengers-based for me. Like, I think we desperately need an Avengers... Or a team. Like, we need a team to be put together in the MCU. I think it's about, like... It's 2019, and it's 2020. Like, it's been 4 years since we've had any... team proper, period. Like, we haven't had a team of anything, so I think it's about time that, like, has Anthony Mackie done something? Like, why is he not being poster childed for this right now?
Yeah,
like,
that's very bizarre.
He should just be and I guess they're getting there, but, like, I think you should start teasing it now, like, hey, like, we need to put the Avengers back together, like, I just think Scott's gonna be the Hulk for Infinity War, get thrown in, like, but like that's probably what they should have done with the end of this movie. Scott should have been like, help, like this guy's about to come, just not destroy the planet, not destroy destroy the entire universe.
Well, I mean, I guess he's not sure.
Yeah, he's not sure. Yeah, and I mean Loki, from Mobius' perspective, that's what like. For Loki, it's happening right. Like they're not sure. Like, is this actually true, or is this guy's just blowing?
Which
smoke?
I kind of like. I do like that we've seen him a bunch, but there's still still is looming, a mystique. Yeah. Like there is still mystique about him because like we are kind of like in the.
Did you just say mystique? No.
There is this kind of like we're kind of in the seat of like Mobius right now. We're like, is this guy that dangerous? Mm-hmm. And hopefully, what the MCU does is be the Loki for us and show us like, yeah, he is that dangerous. But they got their work cut out for him because it's a tough sell after you watch him lose.
Yeah, to Ant-Man. Like if it would have been
stop it. That's the GOAT.
If it would have been like an Avengers team proper, I would have been okay if like imagine like an Avengers team beat him and then he just came back immediately. It's just like, oh, I'm good. Just different version of me that's more powerful. Like they're gonna be like, dog, we used everything we needed to beat this guy. Like, we need help.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a fine balancing act that they have to pull off here between now and, I mean, the next thing we know for sure he's going to show up in is Loki Season 2, which might do a lot of that heavy lifting.
It's going to do a decent amount, and I mean, I feel like Loki season 1 definitely helped probably the viewership a little bit. Like from that to Falcon and the Winter Soldier to WandaVision, or the other way around, probably helped a little bit because like the way Loki ended, just like, oh shoot, I think that was the first example of like these shows actually like mean something. Like these actually mean something for larger, because we were joking around, but kind of serious, like. Is Loki not the most important thing to come out of Phase 4? Like that might
be the
be
overarching kind of narrative.
That's probably the most important thing to happen.
I would say that and the combo of WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness.
Sure.
Because I think I'm still maintaining that
with a little sprinkle of No Way Home in there, because like that's the idea of like these older X-Men characters and these older Sony and Fox characters can show up anywhere.
I'm just just from a character storytelling perspective, like I'm still maintaining that Scarlet Witch is going to end up being the poster child hero for all this when this is all said and done.
Should we talk about the rumor of the thing? So the rumor is that Peter Parker's going to be he's going to be like the lead of Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, which is cool, but also in my opinion slightly to really concerning.
But it's also in direct opposition to what Kevin Feige had previously said. About Spider-Man's kind of role in the MCU going forward.
I think they're nervous that they're not going to be able to sell, because we talked about it a lot. Like who's the face? There's no face. Right? Like before it was Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. Like, and we talked about like now it should have been Ant-Man and the Wasp packaged together. Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel. Like, you had people that can take these spots. And, like, obviously, we talked about it before, like, Black Panther's a little difficult, but then Letitia Wright pulls off an incredible performance. Like, just put her to where the Black Panther was. The Marvels you have there, you have Ant-Man and the Wasp, you have Spider-Man, but, like, what about Captain America? Like, why can't Sam Wilson be the guy right now that's, like, trying to form these Avengers? I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that first post-credit scene should have just been, like, Scott goes to Sam. He's just like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a problem, but he's just like, I know you're Captain America now. Like, I miss Steve, same as you. Like, you might want to start to look at some recruits for this thing. Like, you might want to start to put, I also think that Sam's going to pop up in Secret Invasion at the end.
Makes sense. I hope so.
Yeah. But I think that's what the post-credit scene should have been. It should have been, that's one of like, Scott goes to Sam, it's just like, you need to put the event, like, it's on your shoulders now to put the Avengers back together. Like, there's no Tony, there's no Cap, like, it's you now. But 2 should have been a destroyed timeline version of the Avengers, like, amalgamate them, whatever you want to do, get a couple cameos in there, and have them come from a timeline that Kang was there and be like, you guys are not ready for what's, like, we barely escaped from this. Like, we're lucky to even be alive. Like, you thought Thanos was bad? Like, I'd rather fight Thanos Sunday to Saturday than verse this guy. Like, though, that's what I think your post-credit scene should be. Because you're ending with the Avengers. Like, that's... Like, I said my theory that they're going to split Secret Wars into two, and then Secret Wars and then Avengers Forever. But, like, you got to get some Avengers in there.
Man, I'm imagining a world where maybe in Kang Dynasty, like, he returns and he kills Ant-Man, just, like, off rip. Like, that would kind of weirdly make the ending of this movie better. Like, we see him lose to Ant-Man and, like, he shows back up and then...
Oh, what if you had that theory that, like, what if they should have done a bait and switch at the end of this movie of, like, he kills Scott, but then you find out that wasn't, like, the main...
They should have done that.
Scott.
They would never do that because that would have been insane. That would have been, like, Shyamalan-esque levels of, like, insane plot twist. But, yeah, I had said, like, what if, like, the end of this movie happens and he kills Scott and then you end up finding out that this was one of the alternate timelines. Like, I did think, weirdly, like, something time weirdness was happening when they went back to that narration at the end with the same song. I'm like, wait a second.
Something's off.
I was like, is something...
But again, that's to our point. Like, this movie I felt was, like, afraid to to hit some punch. Like, that's what I respect Multiverse of Madness for. Like, not some of, like, you know, it's funny, like, the in-universe punches, like, you know, do, like, the Doctor Strange punches. Like, you don't need to do these huge, like, multiverse, you know, like, these huge, you know, bigger universe connection punches. Like, you gotta nail your own punches. But, like, that's a bigger universe connection punch. But don't be afraid to take the swing, because it's still narratively in your own movie something to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
That's Ant-Man. And that's the beginning of Phase 5.
Yeah.
What's next for Phase 5?
Is it Guardians? Or is there...
Guardians Volume 3.
We talked about that. It's Guardians, and then Loki's in the summer.
Yeah, Loki's in the summer, and then after that should be Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion and the Marvels, I think, are happening around similar times.
I think they might end with the Marvel. I think there's something in the Marvels that that's why I said I think they needed something to hold. Like, they wanted people to see this first and then watch the Marvels. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a version of Kang that's out in space somewhere right now. Maybe, like, leading the Shi'ar, like, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So,
this movie did some interesting things. If, you know, it wasn't maybe executed the best, didn't look the best, but, you know, all credit, all hats off to Jonathan Majors, put up just an absolutely incredible performance.
Paul Rudd, and then honestly, Michelle Pfeiffer, too.
Corey Stoll was great.
Yeah. Stop being so serious for a character like that.
Yeah,
He's a floating head that's just in a mechanized body.
Yeah, it was fine.
Know your place.
Yeah, and then, you know, just looking ahead, looking forward to what happens next with Kang. Like, I know it, you know, it'll probably bum some people out that, like, he lost, like, in his first outing, but, you know, Kang's story is one of failure. That's kind of his shtick, is he fails, but the reason why he's so menacing is he can fail and learn from his own failures and come back even all powerful.
Yeah. And I mean, he talked like, what's Kang? Kang's just a guy. Like, I think that's why it's a great juxtaposition from Thanos. And like, again, that's why I think they should have held some of these things. Like, he's just it's just a guy. Like, he's just a person. Like, bleeds the same as us, but like, and that's why, you know, he's taking the place of Doom, essentially. You know,
it's a through line. Also, you know, he says it in this movie, but he also says it in Loki. Like, Loki says, like, you're just a man, and Kang, and He Who Remains says, like, I hope that's not like a disappointment.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not some god. I'm not some, like, because we thought that it was going to be Richard E. Grant was going to be the man, like, because even then, like, I'm a survivor is what Loki is. Like, I thought Loki would have survived to the very end of the time. Like, no, Kang, like, I'm just a guy, but I'm pretty resourceful myself, so I was able to survive this thing.
Yeah.
So, who knows? We still got questions about how the multiverse works, how dimensions work, because I don't think it's the same thing as, like, Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, I think that's a dimension-based thing versus, like, a timeline. I don't know, man.
I don't know, man.
Ask why.
I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know,
man.
Because, you know, Hank does ask Janet pretty straight up, like, the multiverses and, like, alternate dimensions and timelines, and she's like, yeah, like, it's everything that we had theorized it was. So, I don't know. More Janet Van Dyne. I'd love to see Michelle Pfeiffer do some more stuff in this universe.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like there is a weird, like, there is an important role for her
Mm-hmm.
in coming out of this movie, and I hope they realize that. Like, I hope they do realize that, like, they kind of did strike on something interesting between him and her, and I hope this isn't the last we see of that kind of relationship between Janet and Kang. Like, I do hope there's more there.
I personally think that she should have got de-aged, and like they should have found a new actress, and then that should have been Janet. Like, Janet should have been prime Janet Van Dyne. Like, you know, that was heroing in the 80s, and then that comes back to the future, kind of like Cap does. Yeah, that would have been an interesting concept, but who knows? Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? He who remains is to say.
Yeah.
Where does this rank on your MCU list?
I think I ended it up putting it 26th out of 31.
I have it 27th out of 31, and I really want to drop it a spot, but I'm going to leave it where it is, 27th. I have it sandwiched in between. I think Iron Man 3 is a little better because I think I don't know why, like, I'm giving Iron Man 3 the benefit of the doubt. I just think it's a fun little stupid movie that's just, I can, you know, just this week in MCU, not pulling the trigger on stuff.
Yeah.
And then Captain Marvel's on the other side of it.
Okay, so I have it between Iron Man 3 on the other side, so I have it above Iron Man 3, and just under The Incredible Hulk, which that movie is a little bit, I quite like bits of that movie.
Yeah.
Which, like, when you get down to, like, the bottom of these, like... Yeah. It's like the movies that, like, you like some bits, but, like, on a whole, you're like, it doesn't really work. Like, I have Thor 1 around here in this spot. Captain Marvel's a couple spots below it. Like, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp down around here as well. So, yeah, like I said, there are some interesting things, and I mean, maybe some of the interesting things aren't going to come to pass. Like, I don't know if our theory about him becoming He Who Remains is true, but it's plausible. So, you know, if anything, this movie definitely provoked some thoughts about the direction of Kang.
And I think that's probably what they wanted to. They wanted more thought-provoking versus, like, I mean, you want to make a good movie. Yeah. But, like, I feel like, sadly, that was not on their priority list. Mm-hmm. And I can tell that by, like, I listened to some of the things Peyton Reed was talking about this movie, and I'm, like, listening, and I'm, like, I don't feel like you had your hand completely on the wheel for this whole thing. Like, it doesn't feel like somebody that's made movies before like, Peyton Reed directed the last episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, like, one of the most heralded of the Star Wars universe pieces of lore that they have in there.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it helps that you have Prime Luke Skywalker, but you still got to execute. Like, that feels like it's execution. This doesn't feel like it has execution to it.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. But like I said, definitely had some thought-provoking moments. Had some incredible performances. Looking forward to seeing Paul Rudd again. It's some form or fashion. Presumably, I'd imagine Secret War or Kang Dynasty is the next time we'll see Paul Rudd. You know. And he's definitely inserted himself in a more elevated space in the Avengers than when he walked into this movie, which, you know, is also a good thing. So that's going to do it for us this week. We can be followed on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I started that weird, but saved it. Project INF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram.
At the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you very much. More socials to come as we develop and expand those things. Next week, don't know.
Yeah, don't know.
We can talk about the Mandalorian.
Yeah, maybe we do a little something with that. Have we talked about the Mandalorian? We didn't talk about season 1 or season 2.
No.
Mandalorian preview next week. We're going to talk about one of, I think, both of our just favorite shows ever. I love that show. And maybe that's a good time to talk about Disney Plus itself, because that was one of the main, that and WandaVision were the two main cells of original content on Disney Plus. So maybe we talk about streaming and how streaming connects to big budget movies as well, and kind of, you know, the correlation between those two. So
that sounds good.
Yeah, last week I think we had a great discussion last week, and I think that might be the future of what we do. I think we have good discussions about, you know, the real world implications and the in world stuff that happens. So
yeah, well, that sounds like a good plan, I think, in lieu of anything else. So from the
careful man,
the Hank Pym of the podcast.
I don't know. And you waited for me to say that he was one of the lesser developed characters to call me Hank Pym. But I am the god of the ants now.
You're the ant god.
I'm the ant god.
What could be better than that?
Being the moon god.
I like ants.
You can't. Listen, I'll tell you something about Hank. He is true to himself, though. He don't switch up. I love ants and I love my wife.
Great. We should all aspire to be to that.
Yeah. Love the environment and love your wife.
Yes! Perfect. See?
Good job.
That's why you're the Hank Pym of the podcast.
Good job, Hank. I'm movie Hank Pym.
Yes. Cannot stress that enough.
Became a better father?
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Next week we'll talk about the Mandalorian and a couple other things. Obviously we're going to talk about The Last of Us also.
Yeah, it cannot. That's contractually pay us.
So until then, we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Peace.